So I see that you're judging yourself for how your life has turned out up until this point, or maybe even just how today has gone so far. Like you had certain expectations for your day today, and the expectations haven't been met by the time you thought they would be, and then you start to maybe feel guilty, you're critical of yourself, and that's okay. And at the same time, can we invite some compassion for self in at this point in time? Because it's beautiful that you had an intention to get something done by a certain hour or achieve this or that. And just because you didn't get it done, it doesn't make that intention void. And maybe later on in the day you'll get it done, or maybe next week, but just because you've had a hiccup, it's important that you don't punish yourself. Yes, accountability and discipline is important, but at the same time, it doesn't help to ridicule ourselves. And so, if you haven't achieved that thing that you wanted to achieve, that's okay. There's going to be another opportunity. And perhaps the invitation is in this moment that we cultivate that compassion for self, that self-love, and allow ourselves to experience this aspect of life, this emotion, rather than wishing it away. Because maybe the whole purpose of your plan at this point in time was to bring you to the place where you needed to offer yourself the love or the acceptance or the understanding that maybe you were seeking externally. Maybe you believe that the thing that you haven't gotten completed, or the task that went awry, maybe you expected that someone would compliment you as a result of this, or they would offer you love. And so now you haven't achieved said thing, and there's no option but for you to give yourself that love, for you to give yourself that compassion, for you to accept yourself as you are now. Because your worth is inherent in your existence, and of course it's wonderful to offer and to create and to share with the world, but whether we do this or not, it doesn't strip us of this intrinsic value that you have simply by being a living, breathing human. So take this opportunity, rather than holding on to that judgment towards self, to offer yourself that compassion, to show yourself some empathy and understanding, and see the beauty in your intention in the first place, but also see the beauty in being in a position to offer yourself that kindness, because you're so deserving of it, and you don't necessarily need to do anything in order to have it. As if there could be any other way. It unfolds as it does, and it doesn't always look how the mind would like it to, or how the mind anticipates. Thank you for being here. Thank you for checking in. Thank you for being you. You're doing a great job. Hello friend, and welcome to today's chat or discussion, whatever you want to call this, we talk about things. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about the idea of seeking first to understand and then to be understood. Because when we seek to be understood, we're instantly outsourcing our power because we need someone to see us in a certain way. And the issue is that we're not able to dictate necessarily what other people think or do, because that's all external, that's all outside of us. But we do have full autonomy over what's going on inside us. And through understanding, we're able to put ourselves in the shoes of the other person. Understanding opens up the door for compassion and empathy, right? When we seek to understand, nothing can faze us from this position because we don't have an agenda that needs to be validated by someone or something on the outside. And so in understanding, we can maybe have different ideas and beliefs, but I can still understand your ideas and beliefs, even if they contrast mine. Our beliefs at the end of the day are constantly in flux and they're constantly changing, and our essence, our spirit, the soul, or the presence, whatever you might want to call it, that's consistent throughout all beings, regardless of their beliefs, regardless of their ideas and ideologies that they might adhere to. And so it might be the case that we distance ourselves from certain people if the beliefs and the conflicts are too strong perhaps to be navigated through understanding, because there are situations where it might be unhealthy and unhelpful to be around certain people, and that's okay. But when we seek to understand, we can make those discernments and decisions to distance ourselves from people from a place of love and a place of heartfulness, rather than doing it from a place of argument or conflict or abrasiveness. And so the gift of understanding it's a gift of peace within, but also that same peace almost shimmers to the outside as well, because it's only when we fuel an argument or we fuel a fire that it rages on. And if we can keep it small and contained through understanding, then it needn't erupt and there needn't be this terrible tension. And it takes a lot of spiritual maturity, I would say, and emotional maturity to recognize that it's okay for people to have differing beliefs and opinions to us. It doesn't make ours any more or less valid, because they are what they are. And what might be serving me at this point in time might not be serving someone else at their point in their journey, and vice versa. And also, we must understand ourselves, because a belief that I might have today could be drastically different to the beliefs that I have next week, because I'm always changing and I'm always gathering more information and more experience in the world as I go about my life. And we're all in the same boat in this regard. So to put so much weight on something as impermanent as ideology, belief, opinion, it's unnecessary. I think that we can bask in our current reality and our current experience as we perceive it, and enjoy that for what it is at the point that it is there. And if and when it comes to pass or comes to transform into another belief or another system or another whatever it might be, then that's okay. We needn't judge the past version of ourselves, because at that point in time, that's where we were. That was a different you. It was a different me. And respect for ourselves and for others, for ultimately we are all just a reflection of one another. And for me, on my journey, it's been so profound to not desire to manipulate and change other people and other places and other things, and just allow them to be as they are. Allow each moment to be as it is. Allow each being to be as they are. Allow the weather to be as it is. You know, if your bus is late, that's okay. There's understanding in why the bus is late. And maybe you're going to meet somebody and they get angry at you, and you can understand why they're angry, because just before you were in the same situation where the bus was late for you, and now this person is late, or rather you're late for this person. But it could work either way. But through understanding, we can navigate each situation from a place of personal power, a place of sovereignty, where our external circumstances needn't dictate how we feel within. And by cultivating that peace within, we can radiate that out far and beyond for the well-being of all. And so is the journey of life, constantly and perpetually unfolding in its beauty, however it might look. I hope you found some value in this message today, and if you did, I'd appreciate it if you could like the video and share the video with anyone that might be interested. And have a beautiful day, beautiful week, and I'll catch you next time. It's not that we want to be successful for the sake of being successful. We want success because we believe we're going to feel a certain way when we achieve success. Perhaps you have felt that you're not successful, or maybe that you are successful in some places but not in other places. And that's all quite normal, I would say, assuming that you're a human. There's been many instances where I have felt and feel unsuccessful. And I'm sure we've all heard the expression, if you don't feel successful, redefine success. I mean, that's nice. But if we could just redefine success that easily and just have it redefined and have that totally embodied and be like, cool, success for me is now sitting on the couch and not doing anything, and I'm perfectly happy with that. I mean, if we could all do that and rewire ourselves like that, I think we would do that in a heartbeat, but it's not that easy. In my efforts to achieve success throughout my life, I have come to realize it's through success that I hope to feel a certain way. And so rather than using the success in order to feel the way that I want to feel, I can feel the way that I want to feel presently, rather than pushing it off to the point where I have achieved said success. To give an example, I have this thing where I don't really like having small talk. I don't really like talking about the weather, and I don't like conversation just for the sake of conversation. I prefer to talk about feelings and stuff like that. There was a period of time for many, many years in my life where I would walk past people on the street and they would tell me, oh, it's a beautiful day, isn't it? And in my head, my response would be, why can't you just tell me your deepest, darkest secrets and let's just dissect them together? For me, that's what I get a kick out of a lot of the time, is like really, digging deep into existentialism and like, what are we doing here? And why do we feel the way that we feel? And is there another way we can live? And blah, blah, blah. And for a lot of people, that's boring, and that's fine. But it's only through my resistance to other ways of being, or to how other people perceive the world. This is what upset me. And to bring this back to success, for me in that scenario, success would have been to find myself surrounded by people that wanted to talk about their feelings and wanted to share on a deeper level. So that's what I would have called success, would be if I could surround myself with those people, then I would be successful. And fact of the matter is, you're not always going to be around people like that. Of course, from time to time you will be, and hopefully for a lot of the time you will be if that's what you're into. you find your tribe and your community. But if you're in the world, you also have to accept that there's other people that share differing beliefs to you, and they don't want to talk about the same things that you want to talk about, and they have different interests and all of this. And that's all beautiful and wonderful. And that's the gift of diversity that we have. So wanting and aspiring to be surrounded by people that you want, or to be in a certain place, or to, have acquired certain things in your life is all wonderful, and that's great. And we can search for those people or take action to get to the places and achieve the things we would like. But that end goal doesn't have to be the defining factor in whether or not you are successful. Because as we've mentioned, the diversity and the change of life is constant, and that is always going to be constant. So these things are always going to be changing, and it's finding success or feelings of contentment in these scenarios that we really truly achieve what it is we hope to achieve when we are successful. It's not that we want to be successful for the sake of being successful. We want success because we believe we're going to feel a certain way when we achieve success. And with my trivial example of walking on the street and talking to people and really not wanting to have small talk, what I learned was that I can't make everybody tell me all of their feelings. What I could do, though, what was totally in my control, was to be equally as enthused about talking about the weather as I am talking about other stuff. So I made a decision that rather than being annoyed at people for not talking about their feelings, or for trying to get people to talk about their feelings when clearly they weren't, offering it up to the table, I would just meet them where they were at and what they would like, which is to talk about the weather. So now if someone tells me, oh, it's a beautiful day, and obviously I'm in the same, we're beside each other, it's the same day, I can perceive it the same way as it's a beautiful day, it's great, yeah, cool, I didn't need you to tell me that, but you did, and that's wonderful, and I appreciate that. At the end of the day, you're connecting with the fellow human, and that's a beautiful thing. Maybe it's not the way that I ideally would like to connect with all of the people, but it's fine. So I don't need to be so down on myself and these other people for not meeting these silly expectations that David has come up with in his head as to how the world is supposed to function and how the people are supposed to all get along. And so in finding success in each and every interaction, I no longer need to be with certain people in order to feel valued or content in my day, because I've found a way to get that from each and every interaction. And you can apply this to other scenarios in your life as well. For example, if you have a certain amount of wealth that you wish to acquire, rather than waiting until you've acquired that wealth to feel the benefits of having the wealth, you could just recognize that at this moment in time you have whatever it is that you have. Maybe you have a fraction of that money, and it allows you to buy a coffee rather than a sports car. Then you can get your coffee and really recognize the abundance in that coffee. The fact that you can go into a place and you can interact with a barista or whatever, and they give you whatever you order, your latte, your cappuccino, and it's really wonderful. And maybe you can do that once a week on your current budget, and that's a beautiful thing. And you can find success in that interaction rather than waiting for what you perceive to be the ultimate success, which is having whatever, a car or a house or something like that. I'm reading The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck at the moment, which is a book by Mark Manson. He touches on a story. One of the guitarists of Metallica was kicked out of the band just before Metallica got real big. Then he went on to start another metal band called Megadeth. So both of these bands are incredibly successful, but he's still upset because of the whole Metallica thing, even though he has probably all that he could ever have imagined pre-Metallica. It just kind of goes to show that whether it's a cup of coffee that you're wishing to acquire, or a house, or be the biggest band in the world, there's always going to be another level that you wish you could be at for that success to be felt. And in truth, you can keep going and going and going and going, but you'll never get there so long as there's a there for you to get to. So it's in recognizing the success in this here now moment, the small success, be it a coffee, be it a house, be it a hug with a friend, or just be it an interaction with some dude who wants to comment on the state of the footpaths and the dog poo that people aren't cleaning up. It's all fine. There's no reason to neglect ourselves by withholding feelings of joy and appreciation for each and everything around us until those moments that we in our minds deem to be worthy of us feeling how we want to feel, or how we would like to, ideally operate in the world. Because we're always kind of going through life, and there'll be the ups and the downs, and there'll be the struggles, and there'll be these effortless flows that we go through, and that's all great. The ebbs and the flows equally contribute to the culmination of life, and so it is. Thanks for hanging out, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe and like the video so that it gets pushed out to more people, and I really appreciate the support, and I'll catch you in the next one. See you. Nectarine. So good. So grateful for this coffee. If it would ever start. Oh, I gotta press the button. Here we go. Would a coffee be complete without almond milk? Maybe, depending on who you're talking to. Delicious. So much gratitude. Okay, enough playing about. Just trying to introduce this video, I don't know how to. Here's the video, guys, enjoy. Gratitude is one of those things that I first had introduced to me in a not so positive way, and that's when I was growing up. I would often be condemned for not being grateful for things. For example, if I wasn't hungry and I didn't want to finish my food, or if I just didn't like the food, I would be told, don't be so ungrateful, eat your food. There's starving children in Africa that would be so happy to have even a small amount of that food. And I'm not saying that our caregivers are bad people or anything like this. I'm just intending to share an alternative perspective on gratitude, like reframing gratitude, so that we can recognize the ways in which having gratitude and expressing how grateful we are for things can improve and benefit our lives and the lives of people around us. So the negative connotation that I just mentioned is something that for me brought up a lot of resistance toward expressing gratitude, period. From that point on, you probably experienced something similar, because it's kind of what's going on in the collective, is that people are very, very frequently frustrated that the child they're looking after isn't cooperating with them, and so they project their discontent with the scenario onto the child, and then the child thinks there's something wrong with him or her, and then you know how it goes. Nowadays, I use gratitude as a tool to help shape the reality that I am in and that I am aware of. And by this I mean, at any one time, there are many things that we can focus on in our lives, in our day, in a situation. And the tendency that I have, and that most people have, I'm sure, is to focus on the lack in a scenario, the negative in a scenario. We can use gratitude as a way of recognizing that which we enjoy or that which we are fond of in our lives. And in doing so, you're bringing your awareness to the things that you want. And in any given situation, even if there's mostly things that you don't want in that situation, you can probably find something that you do like about the scenario. So for example, if it's a really wet, rainy day and the heating isn't working in your house and you just got home from work, all of your clothes are wet, there's no hot water, like there's nothing. You could say like that's a pretty terrible situation, and it's very difficult to find anything to be grateful about of that situation. But you might notice that the kettle is working, and so you can heat up a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and like that's one tiny little thing amidst all of the chaos and all of the things that you really would rather not be happening right now. But if you can focus on that cup of tea or that cup of coffee or whatever it is, then you're shifting yourself from focusing on all of these things that you don't like to focusing on this thing that you do like. And in focusing on the thing that you do like, you're improving your whole energy field to be synonymous with that. And in focusing on what you do like, you're aligning with more of this. So you will recognize more of this in your surroundings, and more of this will naturally be attracted to you as well, because you have it in your awareness. It's not necessarily that new things will be happening or that these things weren't happening all of the time, but it's more so that you weren't previously aware of them. Because when you're focusing on the lack, the things that you don't like, the things that you want to change, you're neglecting the things that are there already that you do like and that you don't want to change, because they are perfect as they are and you are in appreciation of them. The main purpose of this insight video is to encourage you, to invite you to investigate the practice of gratitude in a new way that might not have been accessible for you before. For most of my life, I never liked the word gratitude. It really pissed me off, to be honest. And I would always hear the word gratitude and my body would just like squeeze up, and I would feel that like guilt that I felt when I was a kid for not eating the food that I didn't want to eat. So be grateful for things first and foremost for yourself, because you're deserving of scenarios that bring you great joy and pleasure. And the irony is that the people around you are going to experience a similar benefit due to proximity. So even in those scenarios where you really are finding it challenging to persevere or to find anything to be appreciative of, I encourage you to search just a little bit more. Even the fact that you're in a really terrible scenario means that you're alive, which means that you're breathing, and your breath is something that we can all be hugely grateful for. It's a small thing, it's also a massive thing. Without it, you wouldn't be here, and then these questions wouldn't even exist. But I encourage you, I challenge you to seek to notice what it is in any given situation that you really are appreciative of, and just see what happens. See how noticing one thing magically makes a load of other things that you didn't notice before come into your awareness, and then with recognition of these things, your whole being is uplifted, and so too are those around you. Thank you for being here. If you found any value in this video, feel free to subscribe. If you want to support me, you can become a patron on Patreon. I'm going to put the links here for that, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye. I think that regardless of the circumstances, if you are letting go of a relationship in your life, it's going to be a challenging experience, because transitioning out of a relationship, it's basically a change happening in your life, and with change comes the necessity to grieve. So there's always going to be a period of discomfort, you could say, when you're leaving a relationship. And this could be a relationship with a family member or an employer or a friend, partner. It doesn't really matter. A lot of the time we find ourselves in a position where we're leaving a relationship that maybe we don't necessarily want to leave. The other person in the relationship is backing away from us, and that can be really painful. It's common that when this happens, we might start to get down on ourselves and think that maybe we're not good enough to be in this person's life, or that we're bad people because this person doesn't want us around. And it's really normal to feel that way. I think it's important to realize that the transitioning in your relationships is not necessarily a reflection of your self-worth. When this is happening and when you notice these feelings arising, I really encourage you to be gentle with yourself. Sometimes we aren't compatible with the people that we're separating from. And as much as our mind would like us to be, so we could uphold this image, sometimes it's just best for that separation to occur. In my experience, I've had friendships or friends that distanced themselves from me, and I felt a lot of regret or shame, wondering, how could I have been better? Did I do something wrong? Is it my fault? I don't think it's overly important to focus on any of that. And this isn't to say that if you have done something that wasn't in the best interest of another person, or was perhaps selfish or done out of fear, it's not to let you off the hook for that, because I've done lots of stuff that if I could go back in time, I wouldn't do again. Fact of the matter is, I did do them. And now, with my present awareness from those past situations, I can move forward with more conscious awareness, with more love. In doing that, I also need to be mindful and give that love to myself, because it's no use living a life full of regret for the decisions that you made or the decisions that you didn't make. Because we all are making mistakes and failing and doing things that maybe our current selves aren't proud of. But it's only in going through all of these lessons that we learn to step into our next highest version of self. And everybody does this. Like, we all make mistakes. We all screw up. The most important thing is that you're able to forgive yourself. If someone that you might have hurt or upset doesn't want to be in your life, that's okay. You don't need to be friends with everybody. Some relationships, they come only to go. It's the temporary experience that allows you to learn and cultivate a deeper understanding of yourself, a deeper understanding of how to show up in the best way possible. See, there's an opportunity in all of these situations that we might perceive as bad or negative. Nowadays, it's really common that people might get ghosted when you meet someone or whatever, and the next day they just stop responding to you and they don't even give an excuse or anything. They just disappear off the face of the earth, and that can be really concerning, because you think to yourself, what have I done that makes me so undesirable to this person? And the truth is that if someone's ghosting you, you guys aren't a good fit. Obviously you're not, because they don't want to be involved with you. And why would you want to be involved with somebody that doesn't want to be involved with you? Because there's not an alignment there in that relationship. So it's better for you both to separate. And yes, it might be painful for a few days or a few weeks or months even, maybe years. When you're feeling that pain, that's the opportunity for you to look within and to give yourself that love that you might be projecting onto this other person. That's the lesson in the transitioning of that relationship. Because you can keep chasing a relationship that doesn't want you in it, but ultimately you're just digging yourself a deeper hole, and eventually you will have to climb back out of that hole. And of course I'm speaking in metaphor here, but climbing out of the hole is going within yourself and finding that peace that you imagine this job would give you, or that this partner might give you, and realizing that In finding that within yourself, in finding and realizing your own inherent value while you're alone, that gives you the ability to show up in a bigger and bolder way than ever before. Everything else, all of the relationships are like the icing on the cake for you. They're not necessary, but they're pretty cool when they do arrive. And with that in mind, it's a lot easier to forgive ourselves for things that we might have done, or for things that might have happened, for people that didn't show up, or for the times we didn't show up. We can go a little bit easy on ourselves, knowing that this person or that job or whatever it might be doesn't define our worth, it doesn't define our potential. And ultimately, it's given us an opportunity to go within and cultivate this deeper connection to self. No matter what's happening out there in the ocean of life, if you've got this connection to your heart, if you've got this deep sense of understanding of self, you're still rooted in that truth, and that's something that will bring you back and ground you each and every time your mind starts to wander. And there's great power in that. Allow relationships to come and allow them to go, and don't be bitter toward yourself or toward the other people involved, because it's best for you and it's best for the other people. Life's always ebbing and flowing. People come, people go. And throughout all of that, we can learn. We can improve. We can show up for ourselves in order to show up better for the next person that comes along. I think that when it comes to confidence and self-confidence and performing and whatnot, and the fear around all of it, our concern is with the way that we might be received by other people for the most part. And so we don't want to be received poorly. We want people to like us. We want people to enjoy what we have to offer. The lack of confidence comes from the belief that we may not be able to deliver on what it is we have to offer. The best way that I've found to navigate it is to accept that it is possible that you may mess up, that you may not articulate your sentences so perfectly, that you might sing a wrong note or anything like this, and be okay with the fact that that is a possibility, and that if it happens, you'll be able to navigate it from that point as well. Because you can't guarantee all of your performances are going to be perfect. Perfect is subjective, of course, anyway, but I've found that in being okay and accepting the flaws that I might exhibit, or the judgments that others might have of me, because there's always going to be some anyway. Like, you could give, like, you know, in your opinion, the best performance ever, but there's still going to be someone who just doesn't like it, doesn't like you for whatever reason. And that's okay. So really, it's about being okay with all of the potential outcomes that might be there. And that's how you really gain the confidence and the self-confidence to put yourself out there and to be there. When I was in college, I would go into classrooms and make announcements and stuff as part of the student union. And a lot of the time, every time, I wasn't invited in. A lot of the time the lecturer might tell me to go away, and the students a lot of the time didn't really care about what I was saying, but it was my job and that's what I was doing. So before any of these events or any of these moments, I would certainly be scared. I would be afraid, and I would go and do it anyway, because that's what was required of me, or that's what I wanted to do. Like, ultimately that was the priority, versus feeling safe and secure in not doing it. I don't do anything like with no fear. Like, I'm still afraid of everything. Like, this video is still, it's a fearful thing for me to do, but I'm kind of just taking the fear with me. Like, I know it's there. I know it's there every time I turn on the camera, every time I play something, every time I sing, every time I talk. It's there, but I'm okay with it being there because I know that it's just a part of the process. I've done it enough times now over the last, I think, 10 years or so of performing on a fairly regular basis to know that I will be okay, because I've been okay every other time. And yeah, sometimes, you do get slapped with a horrible comment from somebody, or somebody ridicules you, or just, picks on your beard, or I've had all sorts of negative feedback with regards to everything I do, but the positive, it always outweighs the negative. And if it's something that you truly want to do, if you want to express yourself and put yourself out there, then you are going to win, even if you're going to get a few negative Nancy's here and there. So you're not going to please everybody, and that's fine. Like, you don't need to please everybody. It's not possible to please everybody. One person's pleasure is another's pain. Does anyone say that? Well, it's definitely possible. So, like, don't be so focused on pleasing everybody. Well, there's definitely a quote here, like, I don't know the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everybody. You can't do it. It just doesn't work. If you try, like, sing pop songs to a metalhead, they're not going to enjoy it, and that's fine. They like metal music. Vice versa. The most important thing is that you're expressing yourself and you're acting from a place of positive intention, that your heart is in it, that you truly actually want to express what it is that you're expressing. Because if you're acting in alignment like that, then it doesn't even matter the quality of the response that you get, because at the end of the day, you're doing something that is dear to you. And if it's dear to you, it's no doubt going to be dear to others as well. And so with that in mind, it's okay to get up there, and it's okay to fail, and it's okay to be laughed at and ridiculed, and just know that those are only tiny, tiny little aspects of the whole experience of sharing on this planet. And the rest of it is so wholesome and beautiful, and you grow and others grow with you, and it's just a wonderful, warm, fuzzy pot of the best soup that you could ever imagine. Have a beautiful day, have a beautiful week, have a beautiful life, and I'll see you the next time. I wanted to make a video talking about the spiritual path, or the spiritual journey, or the spiritual experience, or the stages of awakening. I don't really know what's the best way to call it, but my intention is to share the experiences that I have had throughout my life and throughout discovering various facets of spirituality, and the different experiences that one might have, like the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations, with the hope that maybe somebody will be able to relate it to their own current experience or something like that. So I've written down some notes for this one, and I've put it into, I guess, 3 different stages. So I've called it the discovery stage. It's the first one. The second stage then is being all spiritual. And then the third stage is the come down. And there's a little intro and a conclusion as well. So to start off with the introduction, I am 26 years old at the moment, and I'm from Ireland. So when I grew up in Ireland, it was a very kind of conservative Catholic traditional upbringing, I suppose, in terms of the school system. And like, everybody would basically be forced to go to mass on Sundays. At least I was. So I had a lot of resentment toward the word God. I didn't like anything to do with Jesus or Christianity or the Lord or any of this stuff. And I would be in mass every Sunday, and all I would want to do is play RuneScape. Like, I would be sitting in the church pew, and I would be sitting there and I'd be thinking, I can't wait to go home and play RuneScape. And that's my initial experience with spirituality, or whatever you want to call it. So it was quite negative, you could say. So I didn't want anything to do with God, I didn't want anything to do with any of this stuff. It was just a burden and a pain in my ass as far as I was concerned. So fast forward then to what I would call the discovery stage. Like throughout my youth, I suppose, I would sometimes look out the window and see the trees, and I would think to myself, like, how the hell did those trees get there? And like, how is the sky a thing? And how am I here? And just kind of general wonderment or sense of like curiosity about the world. And, you know, that was when I was probably like, you know, as early as the age of like 10 or something like that. And I definitely remember I would wake up and I'd be lying in my bed and I'd look out the window and I would just have these like moments where I'd be like, what the hell is going on here? Because, yeah, I mean, I was aware of societal structures to a degree, and like my name and the family system and all of this stuff, but nobody ever seemed to really talk about like the origin of like trees and stuff like that in like a more practical way, I guess. I mean, there's the whole God created the world in 7 days story, but that wasn't resonating with me. So then fast forward to a rainy day, I think it was in 2016 or 2017. I was in Vancouver. It was raining like most days in Vancouver, and I was soaking wet, and I was viewing a house that day because I was trying to find somewhere to rent. And then I was meeting up with somebody, but I had some time to kill and it was raining, so I decided I would go into a bookstore in Vancouver, and it was in that bookstore that I decided, oh, I'm going to buy a book about spirituality or enlightenment. At this point, I didn't really know what any of those terms really meant in depth at all. And I came across The Power of Now, which is actually this book here by Eckhart Tolle. And I bought the book. It's The Power of Now, A Guide to Spiritual Enlightenment. So I was really stoked at this point. I was like, I'm gonna be enlightened. And I went home that day, and like I was called my mom back home, and I was like, Mom, I got this book on spiritual enlightenment. And she was like, oh, cool. And I was reading the book, and if you've read the book, you'd be familiar with the terminology used, but Eckhart says like the word God and Jesus and self and all of these words, and at this time I still had no interest in God, no interest in Jesus. I did not want to hear these words because it just reminded me of the frustration and miserable experience that I would have had in my childhood in Ireland, going to mass and the whole school system and everything like that. So I didn't really resonate with the book. It kind of annoyed me, to be honest with you. And I kind of just put it down and left it at that, really. Like, it didn't really take me anywhere initially, that book. And now during the same time, I went to a folk festival in Vancouver and I was volunteering. And at that folk festival, I was paired up with this girl to sell raffle tickets. So we're going around selling raffle tickets in the festival. And she seems to know like a lot of people. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, hey, how you doing? And I was asking her, like, how do you know all of these people? And she's like, oh, from yoga. I was like, yoga? Because I'd never done yoga at this point, really. I didn't know a whole lot about it. And she was like, yeah, I go to this yoga studio downtown, and you should come sometime. And I was like, okay. So I went to my first yoga class, and it was like a really intense like vinyasa. It was kind of more sports yoga, but I suppose I'd never done so much stretching and connection with the breath before in my life. So it was a totally new experience for me. And I remember doing the shavasana, and I was feeling so just zen and blissed out, and it just felt really good. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, I think there's something here for me. Like, at least in the practice of like movement and connection with the breath. And it was a really beautiful experience. And so after all of the yoga and stuff in Vancouver and that book, I was actually only spending the summer there, and I had to go back to Ireland to finish my final year of college. So I went back to Ireland, which I really didn't want to do because I've just never had the fondest memories or the fondest times in Ireland. And I came back anyway to work on my dissertation, and I was just so miserable, and all I wanted to do was go back to Vancouver the next year. And I was just counting down the days to go back, and I just blamed all of my misery on Ireland, and all of the pain and everything it was Ireland's fault. And then I finally finished college, and I had enough money at this point to go back to Canada, and this time I was like moving back there for, you know, a good while. And so I got on the plane, and we arrived in Vancouver airport, and I had never been so miserable in my entire life up until that day when I arrived back in Vancouver. I don't know what it was, but I realized I had spent the entire year complaining and projecting all of my happiness onto the Vancouver, or onto Canada, or onto just moving. And then I got there, and I just knocked something over. I got there, and it was the worst I'd ever felt, and I was really feeling like hopeless at this point. I was like, what have I done wrong? Like, this is what I wanted. And then I got there, and it just wasn't doing what I thought it would do for me. And you know, I was in a bit of a hole for probably the next couple of months, and then, you know, slowly but surely I started to kind of feel myself again, and I just kind of pottered on through life. I had a job working in a bar, and I was like reasonably satisfied, but at the same time I was like, I could do this maybe for like a few more years, but like, what's the point? Like, there needs to be something more in me or in life or something. Like, this can't just be it. And this was now like 2 years after the initial encounter with yoga and that girl at the folk festival. And I was walking down the street, and I bumped into her again, and she was like, oh, I'm going to this island to live at this yoga center, and you should come. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting idea. I actually needed somewhere to go because my work permit was expiring, and I wasn't going to be able to work in the city anymore. So I thought, well, if I can do like an exchange somewhere else, that would be perfect. And sure enough, I go on the website, I type it in, I send them an email, and I'm like, I'm David, I want to come and help and blah, blah, blah. And they said, oh yeah, cool. So I ended up going there, and that's where my practice like really started to look different. Like, I actually had a practice, because before that I didn't really have much of a practice. Like, I did yoga here and there, but I wasn't really connecting to anything beyond like what I could see in front of me. And so I go to the center, and now I spent about 4 months there, but over that time a lot of stuff changed within me and my perceptions about everything. Like, I did this sort of double take on my life up until that point, really, because at the center, like, I was like the youngest person there, pretty much. Like, everyone else was like at least like 10 to 30 or 40 years older than me. And what was interesting is that I had never really interacted with people older than me, or people like my parents' age, in a capacity where we were like both equal and both willing to learn from one another. Because throughout my upbringing, I was just conditioned to listen to what teachers had to say, listen to what your parents have to say, respect your elders. You don't know anything, basically, until someone older than you and supposedly wiser tells you. So here I was around all of these older people who, according to my programming and conditioning, they should have had all of the answers. But they had as many questions as I did about life. Only they were actually expressing that they didn't have everything figured out. And it was really beautiful to see, because it allowed me to feel more comfortable in my skin as someone who didn't really know what was going on. And I had never related to people in this way before. So in that sense, it was very profound. I did a double take on my whole experience up until then. I was like, okay, so all of these teachers in school, no doubt they were doing their best and they were doing their job and blah, blah, blah. But I wasn't wrong to think that there might be something else out there in the world, that there might be another alternative to the way things are being done. And it was really just comforting, I suppose, in a way, to see this other perspective that I was now living in on that, at that center. And so aside from that, this is where I really started to dive into the study of yoga and meditation, and actually read books. And I started to cultivate my meditation practice there. So that was about 3 years ago. I started meditating every single morning, and I haven't stopped. So I meditate every single morning. Like when I get up, I brush my teeth and I meditate. And the way that's changed over the years, but that's fundamentally, started back then, and it's something I've carried through. So that was the discovery stage. I know that was a lot longer than I anticipated it to be, but that was the discovery stage. Now we move on to stage 2, which I call being all spiritual. So I finished up my time in the yoga center, and I needed to get out of Canada because of visa related issues. So I go back home and I have all of this knowledge, and I'm so excited to share it with my family and friends back home and everybody. And I can't wait to, start my new life as a spiritual person who is basically enlightened at this point. Now, little did I know that most people don't care about this stuff. It's not something that you can theoretically just translate to people or share with people, because it's very much something that transcends language, and it's more experience based. So my parents picked me up at the airport, and we went for lunch, and I just remember feeling really kind of weird about the fact that I was basically a different person. I'd undergone all this change, and they were still seeing me as their son, and there's nothing wrong with any of this, but for me at the time, it was so difficult for me to interact, because I wasn't prepared to interact in the same way that I would have, a few years prior, because I had undergone so much change, and I was excited to share all of these concepts and ideas and all of this stuff, but they didn't really want to hear any, not that they didn't want to hear it, but it was just not something that interested them, which is perfectly understandable, because 10 years ago for me, or 5 years, or even a few years ago, I wouldn't have cared or understood this stuff, because I hadn't lived it or experienced it up until that point. But anyway, the being all spiritual phase, I would say it's the phase where you start to accumulate a lot of spiritual things, spiritual materialism comes into play. You get lots of incense, and I actually tried to buy some incense just before making this video, but I couldn't find any in the shop, so I'll just use some stock footage to show you. And gems and stones, and usually you change your Instagram bio to I don't know, yogi or spiritual seeker, something like this. And it's a phase that for me lasted, I think it's over for me now, because it had kind of gone on for a couple of years, and it wasn't really bringing me peace. You get an initial hit of peace when you get into yoga and meditation and whatnot, but then after a while you kind of start to, I don't know, plateau or something, or your delusion sort of, you see the delusion and then you realize that you can't just neglect all of form. You can't neglect all of your history, all of the ways that most people operate, because while there is a lot of flaws, you could say, in the way that the systems in the world work, there's so much beauty and benefit to them. And it's the point of, I believe, of cultivating awareness and expanding your consciousness is to be able to interact with the world in a more holistic and supportive way for yourself and for the earth itself and the people around. Because otherwise you're just running. Like, I was just running away from everything. Like, I was hoping that a new crystal or a new this or a new that would help me just escape, this whole reality, but it never worked. So to bring it home and to conclude the being all spiritual phase, I would say you get a big spiritual ego, you start trying to be all spiritual and let other people know that you're spiritual. So you got your hippie pants, you're doing yoga in the park, and all of this is fine. I mean, if you want to do it, but in my experience, I was doing it with this like ulterior motivation to try and prove something, which is kind of contradictory to what actual inner work or spiritual work is. Unemployment is typical at this point, or if not unemployment, struggling to start a business or something to this effect. And this is what leads to what I would call the come down, the spiritual come down phase, which is where your incense and your gems and your stones and all of your headstands haven't done what you thought they were going to do, because you're still waking up every day and you're like, well, what am I doing? Like, what's the point in this? And like, why is it so difficult for me to function? And this is when I realized that we don't need to run away from the world or the society or the structures, but we need to approach them from a more conscious place, a place of awareness, where we have a balance between work ethic, pragmatism, action, and also the other side of that, which is rest and flow and integrity, and recognizing that we are all connected on a deeper level, and that it needn't be a battle between businesses or between people or anything like this, but rather we can all work together and we can co-create together. And I realize it now, the way that I perhaps acted, or the way that a lot of people act throughout their spiritual journey or their path or whatever you want to call it, a lot of it's not exactly helpful at the time, but in retrospect I understand that throughout all of that process, I was cultivating a practice which ultimately has ended up serving me, I believe. And yeah, we make mistakes in everything in life, and it's only through these mistakes that we learn to be in the present. And so that's where I feel I am now, is a place of more practicality and pragmatism, and being in a position where I can serve myself and the community and actually create something that is accessible to everybody. Because I saw that sometimes the way that I was being and acting, they weren't exactly accessible for everybody. Some people will relate to certain things, but others won't. And so it's a matter of discerning in each and every scenario what might be the best course of action. And that's what a practice of meditation allows you to do. It allows you to be responsive to the current moment, the present moment, and not the moment that you would prefer it to be, or that it was last week or last year or whatever. Because some people, maybe all they need is a smile, and that's all they need to pick up their day. Whereas other people might actually want to have a conversation. Other people, they might want to just be in solitude without anybody around them. And that's sort of the nature of life. You need to take it as it comes, and life is always changing. You know, the systems and structures are always changing, and we're always changing from one moment to the next. And what I've found is that these practices allow me to consciously play a part in this world as it evolves and as it grows, just as I do. And it's so difficult as a human to accept this, because we're so used to dealing in absolutes. Like, we love to just think that we know the answers, you know? And it's not the case. We don't know the answers. Nobody knows the answers, and that's okay. It's being comfortable in the unknown and realizing that each scenario is a new scenario, and that we can navigate it from the present each and every time. And the results, although they may not be what we would like them to be, we can still work with those results, because those results, again, are going to happen in the present. And it's only in connecting with, you know, the heart or your spirit or whatever it is on your path in any way, like the word universe, God, Christ, all of these things, effectively, to me, they refer to some sort of higher power or creative force that has planted me and you and everybody else on this earth at this point in time. The reason for that, I don't know exactly. You know, I have some ideas. And really the whole purpose of the whole spiritual journey and all of the practices and whatnot is to help us connect to that present moment and to that place of authenticity. And that's not as exciting as the concept of like floating out of your body up into the ether, or like manifesting all of your wildest dreams in physical form. It's not as exciting as that, like, I'll be the first to say it, but it's what I've found to be the only way to actually come to that place of inner peace, or that place of calm, that place of presence, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's not as fancy as many would like it to be, but it is just how it is, and it's beautiful. Even if it's just, you know, listening to the sound of a bird, or the sight of rain running down a window, or the feeling of cold water on your skin as you're caught in a storm that you'd rather not be in. I mean, the only difference between a good thing and a bad thing is how we perceive it. And if we can, you know, put some sort of a leash on our perceptions to the point where we needn't be in detriment as a result of bad things happening to us, because we can flip the perspective on it, then that is the purpose of the spiritual path, or the practices that we embark upon. And for me, that's currently where I'm at. You know, maybe there'll be a second segment to this a few years down the line if I've changed any of my understandings on the whole spiritual path, but that's it for now. I hope that you found some value in this, and I'll catch you next time. In this world, there's a really big emphasis on planning things, having a vision for your future that you are going to take steps toward and attain. I really do see value in planning, but the biggest lie that we tell ourselves is that the plan is actually going to happen. The real utility behind planning, or the actual purpose of planning, is not really to make the plan happen, but it's to give you something to do. It's giving you something to work toward. And along that path, you're going to find a lot of stuff that wasn't in the plan. I was recently having a conversation with a friend, and we were talking about the concept of having like 3-year plans, and how it's like super foolish to not have a plan for your life. And it was really interesting because having a 3-year plan is not necessarily better than having no plan whatsoever. And the lie, so to speak, is that when you have a 3-year plan, you're actually kidding yourself. You're fooling yourself into believing that that's going to happen. And that's going to then lend you a sense of certainty, a sense of calm and peace, because you know what's up ahead in the future. But then the irony is that you don't actually know. You just think you know. But you never really know until you really know. You're lying to yourself, but you don't even realize it, because it takes an expanded awareness to comprehend that the world is going to do its own thing. And that's scary. It's scary knowing that you can, put all of the wheels in motion and all of the things in place and contact the people and send the emails, but it still doesn't guarantee that anything's going to happen the way you want it to. Now, you might have a 3-year plan and feel safe because you think the plan's going to work. And that's why we find so much solace in systems. Go to school. You just got to do school, read the books, do the exams, and you're good for whatever amount of time, 4 years, until you get the piece of paper. And then you realize that you're faced again with the challenge. Like, do you do something by yourself, or do you follow another plan, which is to climb a ladder, usually within a company? Climbing the ladder within the company, slightly more predictable, but still not guaranteed. You might get let go. You might just die on the way to work one day. Like, all of these things are a possibility. So you can have all of the plans and you can feel at ease, knowing what's going to happen, or so you think. And that's cool. But here's the thing. You can equally have no plan and still tap into that sense of safety and certainty. If you really let go and trust the process, the ever unfolding of life, you don't necessarily need a plan in order to have wonderful things happen for you, in order to have a pleasant experience, in order to make the money, make the friends, find the lover, achieve the goal, whatever it is. A plan is not necessarily required. And it's interesting how we have this judgment toward carelessness. Yeah, that's a word I've heard thrown around. Don't be careless. If I don't care about what's going to happen, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's me throwing all caution to the wind. It's just me being open to the flow. And inevitably, you're going to have to open to the flow in some degree anyway, because even if you have a plan, which is considered being careful, the plan's still not going to work. So you're going to have to improvise. You're going to have to flow anyway. It's interesting. It's the starting point. It's the same. And then the destination is what gives us the clarity. Planning implies a destination, whereas the flow aspect is like there's no destination. It's just commitment to the process, commitment to the journey. And so the truth is, there's not actually any certainty other than that there is no certainty. Change will happen whether you have a plan or not. I like planning. Honestly, I do, because it gets me doing things. I planned to sit down and make this video today. I planned the title because I think it would be a nice title for this topic. But also, maybe none of it happens. I mean, it's happening right now, but if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't see the internet, then that's okay too. Because I haven't put all my chips on this one experience. I'm open to the possibility that anything could happen tomorrow. And I've found a relative degree of peace and solace in the uncertainty of life. That's why I'm on this path that I'm on, this path of entrepreneurship and creativity and expressing myself artistically. Because that's not really something that typically offers certainty in society. It's not really promoted for people to do these things. I heard or read a quote or something. It was Obama when he was president talking about how people shouldn't aspire to be the next Drake or like the next, hot thing. They should be doctors and teachers and lawyers. That's what we need, he said. And I found that kind of like contracting. I was like, oh, dude, how can you say that? And I also get it, He had a plan. He has a plan for the world, for the country, whatever. But that doesn't fit everybody. Some people like, just doing the boom, 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 simple things you do. It's like, if you go to school and do this exam, study this hard, you get that amount of whatever points. I don't know what doctors do. And then you'll be a doctor. And that's cool. And that works for people. But then there's the contrary. You have the people that are like in the arts, and come on, the arts, it's not a straight line, but if you're willing to embrace and dance with that uncertainty, with the darkness, it can be quite beautiful. But either way, whichever path you take, to go with the plan or to go with the flow, and they're both kind of intertwined anyway, we never know what's going to happen. And don't kid yourself into thinking that you do. I guess my plan to make this video has been successful, which is cool. And I'm excited to see what else this wonderful world has to offer me. If you found this helpful, there's a newsletter. You can sign up to it. I put my helpful thoughts into writing, and you can be on that list if you want. So go look at that, and have a great day. Check out this video next. If you enjoy this one, I think you'll probably enjoy that one as well. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye. But sometimes I feel it's not working out, and then I see why it didn't work out that way. There's all sorts of treats up ahead, things that you can't even see in your head. This whole world is really diverse, and the best kind of plan, you don't see it first. Focus. There I am. Hello, friend. I was walking into my building earlier today and was having an exchange with one of the neighbors. And the words that we exchanged, it activated something in me. And chances are, if it activated something in me, it might activate something in one of you people, my dear friends that tune into these videos. So what happened was, we had small talk. I know, small talk, it's no fun. But sometimes it happens. And sometimes small talk leads to big talk, which is great. So I don't think we need to dismiss small talk altogether, but I kind of wanted to touch on the power of words and how we cast a spell, an energetic alignment comes to follow the words that we speak. So what happened here was, this lovely person and I, we said hello, and she offered me, she said, oh, we're enjoying the last of the good weather. It's September now, September 1st, it's in Ireland, and typically the weather starts to turn and get a little bit chillier, a little bit more rainy. And it is what it is, it happens. When we say, oh, I'm enjoying the last of the good weather, we're basically saying the good is leaving, right? And we're talking about something like weather here. Weather is not objectively good or bad, it's subjective. But when we call something bad, when we subjectively identify something as bad, then we start to shut down, contract. And when I heard these words, oh, I'm enjoying the last of the weather, the last of the good weather, it just didn't feel good to hear that. It's not that she's wrong in saying that the weather is going to turn to, cold and wet, which is what a lot of people don't quite enjoy, but it's assuming that this weather is good and that weather is bad, and that once this good weather is gone, we won't be able to say we're enjoying the weather, almost. And how I would reframe this personally, and how I do tend to speak, is I don't speak in terms of the transience of time and the projection into the future. I speak in terms of the present that is here now. So another way that you could say that is, oh, it's a beautiful day today. I mean, if we're going to do small talk, we may as well do it in a way that doesn't strip our future of its potential joy and bounty. So maybe I say, oh, it's a lovely day today. The sun is shining, absorbing all of those beautiful light rays. Is there a need to say it's the last of the beautiful light rays? I mean, we can't say that as an absolute truth, but we can say that right now in this moment, the thing in the sky is there and it's shining down upon us and the temperature is quite enjoyable. We catastrophize a future that's yet to come, you know? We catastrophize the moments that aren't even here. And all we're doing is pulling that potential reality into this now. Maybe she didn't feel it, but I certainly felt it. And I think a lot of people might resonate with this. So I invite you, if you are going about your day, maybe you have some small talk, or maybe you have some conversations with a roommate or with a family member or whoever it might be, check in and tune into your language. Is your language neutral? Is it positively charged? Or is it preparing for a negative, in your eyes, future? You know, are you speaking of a negative future to come? Oh, the dark winter, it's coming. Oh, it's going to be so cold. I hate the cold. You can thrive in the cold. I know you can. Get a blanket, get a hot cup of tea, maybe a hot water bottle. Maybe you just get on a plane, go somewhere else where it's sunny. So much possibility, so much potential in each and every moment, no matter the weather, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourself. If you enjoyed the video, could you please press the like button and comment, say, hey, tell me if you liked it or if you didn't like it. Subscribe to the channel for more stuff like this. And also feel free to check out the free meditation in the description. I'll also put a comment with the link in there. And it's a meditation to help you step into your most radically confident and empowered version of self so that you can show up in a world and be of service, recognizing and owning your value and bringing that to your friends, to your family, to your community, to whoever you want to bring it to. Because you have gifts, my friend. And the world deserves to have them as well. So take care of yourself. Until next time, have a great day. You are not everyone. The intention was to respect and honor your own energy, and that's a beautiful thing. Now the thing is, we can go about our lives and we can upset a lot of people despite our intention being well, and that's not a reflection of you or your intention. You see, the thing is, we need contrast in this world in order to experience everything. We need to know what we like in order to know what we don't like. And I don't like Brussels sprouts, but that does not mean that Brussels sprouts are a bad vegetable. I like carrots. That does not mean that they are better than Brussels sprouts. That's just my experience of these two vegetables. And it's the same with being a human. You know, you can be kind and honorable and still upset people. But that's not a reflection or a sign that you are doing something wrong. We are all walking, talking projectors, and the people and the experiences that we have are simply what we project onto the screen. So what we see is a reflection of what is within us. And so the reason people don't like you, it doesn't have anything really to do with you. You're just the screen that they're projecting their own things onto. When it comes to being liked or disliked, what really matters is how you respond to people liking or disliking you. If a load of people like you, that's wonderful. But if you allow that all to go to your head to the point where maybe you aren't kind to other people because you feel that you're on a pedestal and this and that, well, that might not be the most honorable thing to do. Because are we not all deserving of love? And what if, for example, somebody disliked you? A lot of people disliked you. How are you going to respond to that? Are you going to respond or react rather and say that it's all untrue, they're all lying, I'm actually a great person? Or are you going to allow them to have their experience of you and simultaneously know and hold within yourself that that may not be true, and that perhaps you are lovable and that you are liked despite what these people are saying to you? Because this is where true liberation can only come from, is from within. And yes, of course, that's very cliche, but at the end of the day, I've found that to be true for me. Because I can't control whether or not somebody likes me. I can't control if people want to dislike me. That's not up to me. I can try and manipulate them. I can try to tell stories and shed a certain light of myself. Middle East sort of location of this planet. So for me it was Turkey, but if you were somewhere further east than that, you might have a similar experience when moving to a more Western country, such as those in Western Europe or North America, etc. Being with a bunch of travelers for a long time, you sort of begin to adopt this new norm with regards to most aspects of your life, I would say. For example, you shower less, you wear less clothes, you don't change your clothes as often, you're probably not working since you're traveling. You're likely to encounter people that have a curiosity as to what this existence and what this world really is. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot less following the crowd, I suppose. Here, it's quite the dichotomy, because people distinguish between a weekday and a weekend. People have jobs. People here like to dress up. They like to do their makeup and do their hair and take a shower every day. These are all things that are not overly common or popular amongst the sort of vagabond lifestyle. I currently own 2 pairs of underwear. I don't have any long pants. I only have shorts, and I only have a couple of t-shirts. So it's not really like in a world where you kind of are expected to smell reasonably well, and I'm not opposed to showering regularly and changing my clothes and like looking nice and stuff. I'm totally okay with that. It's something that I haven't been used to or felt any pressure to do over the last several months, and it's just interesting when you take inventory of like what you have, like the fact that I don't have soap, I don't have a razor to shave. These are just little things that I'm gonna have to consider, and I'm gonna have to go out and rectify the situation of my wardrobe and toiletry kit. Another thing that contributes to the culture shock that I've been experiencing is just the vibe in general. Like people, the individual, the separation is definitely a lot more prominent in just the overall energy of the place. Walking down the street, it's very common most of the time for someone to just not look at you at all. And in the other part of the world that I've just come from, everyone kind of just stares at me because I look a lot different to everybody else. And you know, we engage, we say hello, how are you, and things like this. But then here I'm very, very normal. I look the same as everybody else almost. I speak the same language, I sound the same. And I think in general, people over this part, they aren't so open to communicating with strangers. Not everybody, but quite a few people, especially in a metropolitan place like this, where a lot of people are going somewhere and that's where they're going, and they don't have any plan to digress from where they're going. And the work-life balance here is quite different compared to what it is in the Eastern world, because in the Eastern world it's more work is a part of life and life is a part of work. And here you are working when you're working, and when you're not working, that's when you're supposedly enjoying your life. And that's one of the biggest contrasts, is that people in Turkey, they would work maybe 12, 16 hours a day, but their work is very much a part of their day, in that their friends come to see them at work, or they're friends with their colleagues, or they're friends with the person that works next door, and they have tea together, and they smoke cigarettes together, and they talk together, and that is their social life, but it's also their source of revenue, income, and purpose. And that's totally contrary to most Western styles of living, in that they are very separate. Work is one thing, and then life is another thing, and that's something you kind of forget about when you're not around it all the time. But then when it comes back, it like kicks you right in the face. An obvious one is that everybody speaks English. I can understand everybody can understand me. It's kind of strange. Normally when I see someone, I want to speak to them in Turkish, and my Turkish is limited, but I know how to say hello and how are you and things like this. And now here everyone just says hello straight up in English, and I'm like, oh, that's unusual. Knowing where you're going to be at certain times of the day, and knowing where your food is, and knowing where your bed is, and having a place to sit down and do some work on the computer. I can, take a shower if I want to take a shower. I can cook my own food. I can prepare everything as I like it. I have the option to welcome people to a space that I've cultivated, and these are all things that you don't really get to experience when you're on the road, because you're a guest everywhere you go pretty much, and you don't really know what's happening one day from the next. And it's quite daunting, and it's quite exciting at the same time. Whereas here there's a lot less excitement, and it's a lot more comfortable, it's a lot more safe. One of the biggest and most challenging things for me with the transition is the anxiety that I feel, like the social anxiety. And it's difficult to explain the source of that or where it comes from, but it's definitely reminiscent of how I felt in school, and the efforts I would make to be a certain way in order to gain the approval of certain people, like classmates or peers or teachers or parents. And it's something that you kind of forget about when you're away. And I mean, I've been away, and I've been really closely connected with people that I've known for such a little amount of time, and they have become my family within the space of like a month or a week even. And when you think about the fact that you spend your whole life pretty much up until a certain point with your family and the friends that you went to school with, so these are people that really have known you for a very large amount of time, and this is very comfortable and it's very normal. And then when you go and you don't take any of your friends or family with you, and you arrive somewhere and you don't have any option really but to connect with new people, and then you connect with these people, and then you find that the relationships that you cultivate are so fruitful despite the tiny amount of time that you've known them relative to how long you've known your mother or your father or your best friend from high school or whatever it is. And I think that's something that's really crazy, is that it doesn't take time necessarily to get to know someone or to get to be at home in a place or with the person, and to leave that place where you were with these people and then go somewhere else it's a little bit overwhelming, because you have so much connection at one point, and then within hours these people are on the other side of the world, and it's really crazy. And then it's like you're back at square one, like you don't have the connection with people, but it might arrive, this evening or tomorrow or the next day. And it's daunting, but it's exciting at the same time, and that's always available to us, whether you're here, there, or anywhere in between. But this anxiety that I feel, I guess I have this idea that people over in this part of the world have a prejudgment about me because it's so close to home and it's so familiar to me, like the people, the looks, the accents, everything. It's so familiar, and it just reminds me of judgment or perceived judgment from, you know, my time at home, I guess, growing up and throughout that period. And it's just something that hasn't been around as long as I've been traveling, because no one knows you. Like, people don't even know the name of the country you're from, and then you tell them, they're like, where's that? You know? Whereas here, you're a lot more worn. And this is the nature of moving. I'm not here to complain or favor one option versus the other, but just observe and notice as it relates to being human and the emotions and all of the things that we feel along the journey, how being in one place feels and how transitioning to another differs. And ultimately it's all part of the picture. They're all just different shades on the canvas, and we're here to learn, and this is part of the learning. And right now this is where I'm situated, and next week we'll see. That first night in Cyprus, I remember I had never been so depressed in my entire life, and I didn't think I could live anymore. Hey, my name is David. I'm happy to have you here. I'm a guy that has traveled at points and is considering traveling again, and here's some insight that I've learned and gathered upon my journey whilst on the road, but also whilst living a settled life here in Ireland, which is what I'm doing now. I've been thinking about traveling lately, thinking about going traveling again. Currently I'm not traveling. Currently I live in one place, and I've lived here for about a year and a half, and it's the place that I'm actually from, more or less. And I had been contemplating going off again after the summer, you know, going on another adventure. And I was talking to a guy yesterday on a farm, and we had a really inspiring conversation, and it got me thinking about travel and why do I travel? Or why do I leave where I live? Why do I keep going somewhere else? And I think it's a question that's worth asking yourself as well, if you're the type to travel, which you probably are if you're watching this video. When I look back at every time that I have gone traveling, it's because I was sad where I was. I wasn't happy. I felt alone. I felt angry. I was upset. I would go. And the very first time I traveled, it was like a working holiday thing. I remember I had never felt happiness like that before. And I was 20 years old at that time, and I think back now and I think the reason that I felt happy then was because that was the first time I had truly left home. I had left my parents. I had left this childlike person that I had been living as for my entire life up until that point. And now for the first time I was living by myself. I didn't have anybody to answer to, and I was making my own way, and it was really empowering. Over the years then, I would come home and then I'd end up going away again. And each time I went away again, I remember that every time I would land, I would be pretty depressed. Like, I would leave here and I would get to where I was going and I would feel lost again. And the most profound memory of this was when I left at the beginning of 2020. I left from Ireland to Cyprus, and I had a grand plan to just go with my backpack, my guitar, my camera equipment, and have the time of my life. And that night, that first night in Cyprus, I remember I had never been so depressed in my entire life, and I didn't think I could live anymore. All I wanted in that moment was to fall asleep and for that pain to go away. Here we are in Cyprus. It's day one. Well, actually, I got here yesterday, so today is Sunday. However, yesterday I didn't really want to do any of this vlogging stuff. I woke up the next day and things were pretty well. Like I was in a fine mental headspace at that point, and I don't think there was anything wrong with how I was feeling. It was just an emotion that was coming up. But it's important for me to contemplate these scenarios and how they come about and why they come about and what happened before it. So each time I would leave here, I would leave feeling dissatisfied with where I was, excited to go somewhere else, and then upon arrival, I felt that pain again, only in a different form. It's like the pain was following me. And this conversation that I had at the farm on the weekend with this gentleman, it inspired something that was already within me. It's like there was a seed there dormant and it's now growing again. And ultimately, the things that I seek when I travel, and this is for me, and this could be different for you, but since I am a human and you are a human, you might find some similarities in your experience. The thing that I seek is community, it's connection, it's like-minded people. The stories that I might tell myself are, there are no people here that get me, so I need to go somewhere else to find them. Or, I don't like it here because of this, or because of that, or I'm lonely here, or Irish girls don't like me. All of these things are beliefs that I've held onto, and so that is what I'm by and large experiencing in my reality. And this morning I went down to the beach near where I live, and I had an experience in a cafe where I had met a bunch of like-minded people. My heart was filled with joy, and I was having beautiful conversations and beautiful interactions. And it was in that moment that I realized I could be in Canada right now. Like, this experience is what I imagine feeling if I was in Canada or wherever, whatever country, insert country that you want to be at. The takeaway here is identify what it is you're hoping to seek, or rather hoping to find when you travel, and then see how can you find that or some variation of that where you are right now. For whatever reason, we have limiting beliefs that tell us otherwise, that where we are sucks and we need to go elsewhere. You know, always looking ahead, rarely focusing on what's here presently. I'm guilty of it, as we all are, but it's actually not true. Maybe there's certain ways that you act here in your home place that is causing you to continuously manifest that undesirable outcome of loneliness or, lack of connection, whatever it is. And when you go and travel, for sure, those programs that you have going, the identity that you have in your hometown, you're able to let go of some of it. And that's why you end up finding more like-minded people, I find that when I do travel, I meet a load of like-minded people, but they're all travelers, and so it's hard to find real long-lasting connections. And you can. I have many friends that I've met all across the world, but it's sad that I can only speak to them on the phone. And also, that's beautiful that I can speak to them on the phone. But to go down to my local area and meet like-minded people and have that traveler experience right there on the beach, and then come back to, a home where I'm relatively grounded, is a gift as well. There's an invitation for you, my friend. Is there something that, even if you have a plan to travel next month, can you be present here now and bring some of that excitement into your current situation? Might not be the whole thing. You might not be on a beach all day drinking pina coladas or whatever it is you fancy doing, but certainly saying hi to a stranger,
or maybe hitchhiking to work if that's what tickles your fancy. Just bring a bit of that magic into your everyday life, because I think we've collectively decided that magic doesn't exist between the hours of 9 to 5, and I think that's bullshit. There's magic everywhere. Thank you for being here. I am deeply grateful. If you enjoyed the video, could you consider liking the video? That's helpful for me. It helps the channel grow. If you want to leave a comment, just say hey, or leave a love heart or something, that's good too. And subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. And also, I made a meditation for confidence. It's gonna allow you to step into a version of yourself that is comfortable and confident with sharing their authentic self and the gifts and the value that you have to offer the world. And it's completely free. If you just want to click on the link in the description, I'll put it in a comment as well. And you can have that, and hopefully that helps you. Until next time, have a beautiful day.
Imagine living a life that you actually liked, where not only do you get to do the things that you like, but you're also really, really good at them. People even pay you to do the things that you like doing and that you're good at. And in fact, people are actually admiring you for how good you are. They literally aspire to be just like you because you're that good. Now, chances are if you've clicked on this video, you're probably not living that life that you want to be living right now. Or maybe you're doing pretty good, but you just want to level up a little bit. Either way, I have some great news, because by the end of this video, you're going to have a serious spring in your step. And all of that stuff is just around the corner. Here's how to get extremely good at anything. Yeah, you can get extremely good. And if you're already good, you can get even better. I think the first thing that we need to get out of the way is that you don't get good at something by thinking about it. You don't get good at something by talking about it to other people. And you don't get good at something when it's the right time to get good at something. You get good at something by doing the thing that you want to get good at. You want to be a carpenter? Cool. You want to be a chef? Awesome. You want to be the best swimmer? Well, you might not be the best, but you can be the best swimmer that you can be. So first of all, I just want to take this opportunity to commend you for how far that you have come. And I want you to commend yourself as well. You're watching a YouTube video, so that means that you probably learned how to walk by this stage. You've probably learned how to speak English, or understand English at least. You've probably learned how to use a computer. Now, all of these things are things that you've learned how to do. Let's take walking as an example. You looked like an idiot when you were trying to walk for the first time. So did I. So does everybody. We literally fall all the time, until one day we don't fall as much, and then the next day maybe we fall a little bit less, and then eventually we just don't really fall. Well, I mean, sometimes you're still gonna fall, but that's okay. You can be an expert at walking and still fall sometimes. But let's look at what it is that you did in order to become an expert at walking. Well, when I was a baby, I didn't care about what other people thought, thankfully. So I was just kind of doing things, right? And that's the difference between getting good at something as a youngster versus as an adult. Because when you're an adult, you're not really focused on doing things. You're focused on thinking about it and wondering what other people might think of you not being able to do the thing, which is the very thing that makes you not get good at the thing that you want to get good at, which is where your confidence inevitably comes from. Because, you know, we become empowered and confident based on the things we offer to this world. And you have skills that maybe they're currently hidden, or maybe you're not expressing them fully in the world, but by practicing the thing and getting good at the thing, that is how your gifts are going to be of most service to yourself, your community, people around you, the world at large. And that's what we want. That's what I want for you, is to be able to express yourself honestly and authentically, and to cultivate that gift that you have. But in order to cultivate that gift that you have, you need to take action. You need to do things. So when we're a baby and we're cultivating our gift of being able to walk from A to B, you know, we start off on our knees. Doesn't look so graceful, probably not that comfortable, but you know, you got to do that if you want to get up to your hunkers. And then eventually maybe you're doing it like a monkey, and then eventually you're actually on your 2 feet and you're walking. You're going to fall down a lot, but that's okay, because like, you're not going to die from trying to do something at a beginner level. Like, the world is set up in a way that you just can't get to the stage of detrimental failure from where you're at, unless you're doing
like extreme adrenaline related things, in which case that's a different conversation. But I'm talking about, you know, getting good at making YouTube videos, or getting good at building houses, or getting good at being an organic vegetable farmer. You can do all of those things, but the first thing that you got to do is invest energy into that action. I have conversations with people and they express to me that they don't like where they're at in life and they want to start something else. You know, like usually it's around the work that they do. I would talk to someone and they say, I'm going to start this business, you know, in the summer or whatever. And then like a year goes by and I'm still having that same conversation with the person. And I ask, why have you not done the thing? You said you were going to do it. And the person hasn't done it because they don't know what to do, or they're afraid that if they do it, that it's not going to work, that they'll be bad at it. And I'm like, yeah, you will be. But that's how you get good at the thing. And you've done this before. The fact that you're here listening to me is proof. You can learn things. You can practice things. And yes, it's more difficult as an adult, but the principle still applies. Do the thing over and over again. Learn from the mistakes. Ask people questions. And then you're going to cultivate that knowledge. But you also need the experience. And the experience comes from doing the thing. So let's say you wanted to get good at making money. So that means you need a business mind. And how do you get good at business? Well, you practice business. How do you practice business? You try to sell something. That's what a business is. You exchange something for something else, and then you'll probably fail. You probably won't sell anything. So that's you falling. You not selling anything, that's you falling as a child when you're trying to walk. Now, you're like, okay, that didn't work. How could I distribute my weight differently this time? Or how could I, you know, engage with potential clients differently this time? Like, what was wrong with my product? How can I refine it? And then you try again, and then, you fall. And then you think again, okay, well, I was doing okay up until this point, but then I started to wobble. So maybe that part is good, I'll keep that, but maybe I'll try something different. And then you get up again and you're like, you're walking, you fell. Business failed again. But then you keep on practicing this, you keep falling and getting back up and refining and learning from the challenges that you experienced. And that is how you're going to get really good at the thing. And before you know it, you are going to be walking. And when you're good at something, you're still going to fall. And don't see it as you get good and then you quit, or you quit excelling. Like, you get good and then you get better, and then you get better, and then you get better, and then you get better. And you're always going to be getting better. The best people in the world, as we, you know, as a society perceive them, they're still always failing and learning. They're just doing it at a much bigger scale. So when you fall and you're an adult, it's like it hurts a bit more because the bigger you are, the harder you fall. The wealthiest people in the world are losing hundreds of millions or billions of dollars of money all of the time, but that's how they make that amount, because they keep practicing and refining. And we get so lost in the perfectionism of like just wanting to go straight from crawling to walking, but that's just not a feasible endeavor. It's just not going to happen because you haven't built the foundation. Something I'm working on right now is my music, and I was frustrated with the lack of progress I was making with music, or I was feeling like I wasn't, you know, sharing and showing up enough as a musician. And so I made a decision that the best way to, you know, get better at that is to put out more music. And so I've been making it a practice every other day to just do a cover of a song that I like. I set up the camera and I just hit record. I do one take. I used to spend so much time trying to make everything perfect, but it's like, well, what was the point in even doing that? Because mostly it's only me that notices. And then also, not even that many people are checking out my music. So it doesn't really matter if it's like 100% or 70%. So we don't need to be perfect before we, you know, express or share the thing. And that's how you learn. If there is an issue, you're like, okay, well, maybe that thumbnail wasn't right, or maybe there was too much high end in my guitar. That's what I just realized from the song I posted on my music channel just now. I probably should have turned down the high end on the guitar, but that's fine because now I know that, and I can take that knowledge with me next time I record a video. And my videos are just going to get better and better and better because I'm committed to the process. The process of getting good involves sucking. Another example is this YouTube channel. I started a YouTube channel in 2019 and was posting all sorts of different content for years and nothing ever happened. And then I figured, well, this isn't really working. How can I get better at YouTube? Because I was good enough, like I was pretty good at, content creation in general, because that I had a background in that, and like people have paid me for that, and people do pay me for that, but I wasn't really cracking the YouTube thing. So I thought, well, then it's probably best for me to refine this process. And what did I do? I set up a new channel, and I was like, oh, I don't want to set up a new channel. Like there's already people here, and like, what if I lose them? But then I realized that's not working. Like I've tried that for so long and it's not working. I keep falling from that position. So maybe I need to shift something. So I set up a new channel with a more focused intention behind that channel, which is to educate and share and do stuff like this. And sure enough, after time, that channel started to grow way more than the other one. So relatively speaking, I've gotten quite good at YouTube, but I'm still getting better. I'm still learning and practicing and implementing different techniques in different videos to find out what works best. How can I communicate my message more effectively, and how can I reach more people? And that's going to result in more income. That's going to result in more reach, more influence, more positive impact for me and my mission. If you're in this stage where you want to get good at something but you're not even taking any action toward it because you're afraid of not being good at it, that's okay, but know that you don't need to be good at it now in order to get good at it. And it's going to be tough at the beginning. And there even comes stages where you are really good and considered really good by a lot of people, and you're still going to have challenges. You're still going to fall, because you're going to find yourself on bigger mountains, and it's easier to fall on, tougher terrain, so to speak. And that terrain applies to arts, it applies to business, it applies to relationships, it applies to, cooking fancier meals. Like a souffle apparently is very difficult to make, even for the most experienced of bakers. So don't let your current inadequacy, which isn't really even inadequacy, prevent you from getting better and getting excellent, pursuing excellence, because you can become incredibly good at anything. And it doesn't even take that long. Once you just start, you need to start screwing up right now. As soon as you watch this video, whatever that thing is that you're putting off, go and do it and suck at it. And tell me then after in the comments, tell me how bad the thing you just did was. I want to hear how sucky your effort was. And that is going to lead you and put you on a trajectory toward success and toward excellence.
Hey man, I got you a gift. Oh, I love gifts. It's peanut butter. Dude, what have you done? Huh? Why is he crying? Well, I just got him this peanut butter. I don't know. Why would you? Why? Well, I thought everyone loves peanut butter. Just because you like peanut butter doesn't mean everyone likes peanut butter. Well, unless he prefers like almond butter or tahini or something. Like if you speak French, you're not. It doesn't mean you're just able to speak Spanish. You need to, like, what? Like, not. It's not one size fits all. Like everyone is not. Are you going to Spain? You never told me you're going to Spain. No, I'm not going to Spain. I love Spain, and you know I love. No, why would you go to Spain? You didn't even tell me. Now you're telling me. I'm not. It seems you didn't even want to tell me. You can't just go to Iceland and then you expect something to be. So you're going to Iceland and you're going to Spain, and you didn't tell me about it. I love Iceland. I've always wanted to see the volcanoes there. You know I have a fetish for seismic activity. I'm trying to make a. It's a metaphor. I'm trying to make a point here. Regardless of our beliefs or our experiences or our ideologies, our religion, whatever it might be, I think that we all have this same longing to be loved, or to feel connection to something bigger than ourselves, to feel safe, whatever you want to call it. It's got different words in many different contexts, but I think fundamentally what's most important here is that we all want the same thing, but it kind of looks a little bit different in the way that we go about achieving it. Some people might think that by acquiring a lot of money, you will achieve safety, you'll achieve, a connection to your heart, to God, whatever it might be. Other people think that perhaps giving away everything is the path to salvation or to God or whatever. For other people, you know, we might go to austerity. For example, you might do a very physically difficult challenge, maybe hardcore cold exposure. Other people might really enjoy going to the spa. You know, these are two completely different experiences, like literally they're opposite ends of the spectrum. But the intention and the end goal is ultimately the same. You know, it's a feeling of strength, it's a feeling of courage, comfort, safety, whatever word you might want to put on it. It doesn't really matter so much, but what's most important is that we recognize that we are all very much in the same boat here. We all have very similar desires, and while it might look different on the outside, if we can recognize that each and every person from a higher perspective is really looking for the same thing, it really opens the door for compassion in our interactions and the way that we are in the world. And if we can have compassion, then we have true power, because we can see people doing things that might frustrate us or upset us, and we can see that regardless of what we may believe to be true or untrue about what the person is doing, ultimately what they're looking for is the same thing that we're looking for. You know, you are looking for what I'm looking for. It might take a different form, but it's the same thing. And how can I judge one for wanting what I want? For I want the same thing. I am you in this way. We're constantly learning and we're constantly living, and the beliefs that I have today might be completely different to the beliefs I have next week or next year. And that's okay. I don't need to hold any judgment toward my past self or my future self for the way things change, because ultimately I know that at the end of the day, regardless of if I'm 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, I still want the same thing deep down. I still want love. I still want to be feeling connected, you know, to myself, to the people around me, to spirit, to a bigger picture, whatever it might be. And yeah, maybe, you know, this year I get to it by playing music, but maybe in 10 years from now I'll be, you know, running marathons. I don't know. But there's no need to judge, you know, someone who does this versus someone who does that, because as we've said, we all just want the same thing, and we should encourage one another on that path. You know, we've got so many different languages in the world, and I can say one thing in English, but if I say the same thing in Spanish, it might actually not be a direct translation. It might look completely different, but ultimately it's getting the same message across. You know, you're articulating the same thing. And the thing about, you know, 3D is that it's very dense, and in the world of form and physical, it's quite difficult to see someone do something that you don't approve of or that you don't agree with, and not let that really affect your mood and emotion, because we're very attached to the way that we see things. But we needn't be so anchored to our beliefs and to our perceptions, because ultimately they're just there as an expression, as a manifestation, and nothing is set in stone down here. I mean, everything's moving all of the time. You know, the way we see things are always moving, the way we feel things, it's always in flux. And that's, you know, the way that it looks. But the one thing that's never really changing is, you know, the source of life, or, you know, that divinity, that sense of belonging or connection or whatever it is that we're looking for. That's always there. And that's not really, that doesn't really change. You know, it's kind of like the thing that underlies life. You know, it's just the current of, you know, energy that's just constantly there. It's constantly going. But all of the other things, you know, they're always changing. You know, they're bouncing back and forth and here and there, and that's all beautiful, and it contributes to, you know, the vast, diverse experience that we have, and, you know, try out different things, you know, do this, do that, play football, play rugby, you know, study different religions, different ideologies, like learn about these things. But don't for a second think that you need to be locked in and attached to one or the other. You know, they're all different paths, and they're all ultimately leading to the same place, you know, the same place of nourishment, of fulfillment. And, you know, find what works for you today. Maybe it's not going to be working for you tomorrow, and that's fine. And you can, you know, move on, find the next thing. Maybe you start a new thing, you know. But ultimately, I think we're all headed to the same place. It just looks a little bit different in how you get there, and that's beautiful. You know, that's what makes life so exciting and scary at the same time. So keep that in mind, you know, when you have judgment toward self or toward others. Like, all you're looking for is the same sense of well-being. How could you withhold love and gratitude and appreciation for anybody for that? And we all just want to be loved. We all just want to give love. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Catch you next time. I'm making sourdough right now. And some people might say that my technique is wrong. And that's fine, because I'm aware that there's many different ways to make sourdough, and that neither are better or worse than the other. Because ultimately you get a loaf of bread at the end of the day, and it's however you like your bread is how you like your bread. What the camera is shaking as I shake this dough. Look at that. The reason that I stopped trying to be right is because I found that it just causes so much conflict within me, and that bleeds through to the external world as well. Because if I had a view about something and then somebody contrasted that view, I would get defensive and conflict would arise. And if you look at any conflict in the world, be it war, be it, you know, just an argument amongst peers, it's as a result of one group or one person thinking that they're right versus the other person who is wrong in their opinion. I don't really think that things exist on a spectrum of right and wrong. I think it's more so there's just difference in the world, and they are just that different. Right and wrong to me almost echoes like good and bad, or better or worse. And again, these things are just completely subjective, based on your life, based on your beliefs, based on what you like and don't like. For me to judge somebody based on what they believe to be wrong or right is quite a futile attempt at making sense of this existence. If I look at why it is in the first place that I do try to be right, ultimately what it comes down to is validation. I want to be validated, and the way that I think a lot of people go about seeking validation is they'll try to get it from the outside rather than giving it to themselves. So rather than me giving myself validation, what I'll do is I'll have an idea of something that I want to do, and I'll bring it to a friend or a family member or something like that, and I'll say, hey, what do you think about this idea? Do you think I should hike this mountain? I want to do that. Like, that's actually what I want to do, but I'm too afraid to do that without someone else's approval. So I bring it to someone else, and then they say, oh yeah, David, that's a great idea, you should hike that mountain. And I'm like, cool, I can hike the mountain. I have their support. So now if I hike the mountain and it goes to shit, no big deal, because they supported me anyway, so they'll probably support me if it fails, right? Whereas if I go to them and they say, oh no, you shouldn't hike that mountain, it's a terrible idea, I'll start to question my own desire in that situation. Like, well, is this what I want to do? Like, is this the best thing for me to do? And then maybe I won't do it. So in that scenario, what I'm doing is I'm outsourcing my own truth, my own sovereignty, my own power, giving it to somebody else in the hopes that they'll give it back to me. And sometimes maybe they do give it back, but a lot of the time they won't. And that's going to lead to a lot of inner conflict for me. So while someone might not approve of me doing such a thing, doesn't mean that they're wrong, doesn't mean that I'm right, or vice versa. It just means we have a differing view on the matter, and there's no need to have a conflict arise as a result of that. Now, on the other hand, if they said,
no, you shouldn't do it, it's a bad idea, and I really wanted to do it, well then what am I going to do? I'm going to try to argue my case as to why it is a good idea. I'm going to say, oh no, but this said this and this said this, and that's why you're wrong and you should actually be supporting me. The thing is, people aren't always going to support your views. They're not going to support your endeavors. They're not going to support your passions all at the time, and that's okay. But we don't need to try and force everybody to see things our way, because that just leads to conflict. That just leads to disrupted relationships. And so it can be quite daunting to let go of this need to be right, because when you do, you're very free. It's a very liberating experience, and humans are actually not very adept at being free. You know, it's quite an unfamiliar thing to us because we've been told what to do all our lives since we were children, and then when we grow up even to be adults, we're still kind of being told what to do within the system. We're told certain ways that you should live. There are certain societal expectations. And if we look at the concept of altruism, for example, this is the premise of doing things for the greater good, or doing things that sacrifice yourself because it benefits somebody else or something else. And the thing about this is, altruism looks different from me to you to the next person, because we all have different beliefs of what is morally correct, and you know, vice versa. And so to be altruistic, if I'm altruistic, it's not necessarily altruistic to the next person. And when we have blanket assumptions about the way the world is and the way the world is supposed to be, that's when we really end up with conflict, because that's when the war happens, because that's when people are like, you better see it my way, because if you don't see it my way, we can't be friends and I might actually shoot you. And that's what happens. So in letting go of the need to be right, and in letting go of the need to prove other people wrong, we really step into this total living freedom. And so then is the question, what is the alternative to being right? Well, you just allow people to be as they are, and you allow yourself to be fluid as well in your choices and your beliefs and your decisions, because trust me, they're always changing. What I believe now is certainly not what I believed 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago even. And it's only through this, you know, constant teasing out of our psyche and self-inquiry that we realize that everything is just in flux. Latching on to anything in particular, it always leads to pain because it inevitably will change, because that's the only constant in life, is change. Everything else is fleeting. Rather than trying to be right all of the time now, I do my best to have compassion and understanding, and to see where I'm coming from in my beliefs, my choices, my decisions, and also seeing that same divinity in whoever I'm, you know, conflicted with. I don't need to argue with them or fight them, but having an understanding of the people around us is a really, really powerful tool to get by in this life with confidence and in an empowered way, because there's always going to be something for you to be right about, and there's always going to be someone for you to prove wrong. It's a never-ending, exhausting battle, and that's just not something I want to be a part of anymore, because it's just conditional. It's conditional acceptance. It's I will only speak to you if you have the same beliefs as me, and that's just perpetuating systems of discrimination and systems of unrest and segregation that we needn't have on any level. The way that I choose to live now is to be kind. You know, if somebody disagrees with me, I won't meet that with argument. I'll meet that with kindness and understanding, and perhaps our differing views might suggest that physical distance between us is appropriate, which means we don't have to speak to each other, we don't have to talk to each other, we don't have to hang out, but we certainly don't need to dislike each other. We can just, you know, live our separate lives, and maybe one day we will be friends, but there's no harm in not being friends. Whether you're friends with someone or not friends with somebody, it doesn't make you a better human or a worse human than the next guy. So that's my motto, is don't be an asshole, basically. Be kind, and
there's certain things that, of course, we just know not to do them. Like, don't spit on people, don't kick people unless, it's absolutely necessary. These things, like, they're not right or wrong, but they're kind of inappropriate, at least in my opinion. I mean, some people might like being spat on, and that's fine too, but having the know-how to speak to somebody about that prior to engaging in such activity probably would be beneficial. I hope you have a beautiful day and that you found some value in this little chat. Take care of yourself. Look at that. If this is wrong, I'm quite happy to be wrong for the rest of my life. The world that I would like to live in, it begins now. It doesn't begin when some president says it begins, or when circumstances in the world change and line up perfectly with my business plan or agenda. We have this incessant need to be perfectly equipped and ready before we'll feel or do anything in life a lot of the times. Like, before filming this, I wanted to start off with the right thing to say, and I just was sitting here for like 3 minutes with the camera recording and nothing was happening. I wouldn't give myself permission to just begin it without knowing exactly what I think is going to be the best thing to do or say. In life in general, I think that we have a tendency to put off doing things or feeling good or feeling content even. We push it off to the future when we've achieved one thing or the other. Sure enough, you find as time passes, you carry that same mindset with you. So even when you do get to the place that you thought that you would feel good, then you've just kind of pushed the mark further on. We don't give ourselves permission to recognize our own beauty or our own intelligence until we've acquired and accumulated a certain amount of likes on a social media post. And sure enough, you can get all of the likes that you thought you could ever need, but then you decide, I want more. If you're into the stock market and things like that, you can check the charts every day and you'll get a little hit when you see it. But ultimately, it's never going to be high enough for you. It could go to the moon and then you'd be looking for a different solar system. If you're unwell, or if you're not happy with where you are in life, you might decide, when I'm better, then I'll feel good and I'll give myself permission to live again. Or when I move city, then I'll feel better. And I mean, I've done a handful of things that I thought would make me feel better, only to find myself perpetuating that state of misery that I was in. When you allow things such as your bank account or the stock market or your Facebook likes and Instagram followers, if you allow all of those things to be the determining factors in how you feel about your health and wealth and your self-worth, right? If you allow these external factors to be the determining factors in how you feel about yourself, then you're effectively just outsourcing this perfection and this joy. So you're projecting it onto these various things. You're projecting it onto, the pretty boy or girl that you fancy, or you're projecting it onto, your financial goals or the dream location that you want to live or whatever. And so long as you're doing this, you'll probably find that when you arrive at these goals or places that you're probably still going to feel the same way, because these places are wonderful and that's all great, but you're projecting your sense of well-being onto all of these things. So you determine that you are not going to feel well, that you're not going to be content and happy unless you have these things, which means that your contentment is conditional. And so long as it is conditional, it will always be conditional. So whether or not you have all of these things, there is going to always be another condition that you find that you want in order to feel good. So you don't need to wait until you achieve and acquire all of these things in order to feel good. And you might wonder, well, I can't imagine how I could ever feel good if I didn't have any of these things. Well, I understand that and I empathize with that, and I feel like that a lot of the time. A practice that I've been using, that I've been utilizing, it's quite cliche, you might say, but I have a little notebook and I do my best at the end of the day to effectively count my blessings or recognize the things that went right today, the things that made my day better, the things that give me that like warm, fuzzy feeling. And so I just write stuff down in my notebook. And when you actually take just like 30 seconds to acknowledge the things in your life that you did enjoy, such as like a text message from a friend, or a cup of tea that you had, or the fact that you have a roof over your head, the fact that you could go to the supermarket and you could buy the bananas that you wanted. All of these things are propelling you into a vibration of appreciation and gratitude. And it's in this vibration, in this space, that you start to cultivate that sense of well-being from within. And you no longer feel the need to continue projecting it onto things that you don't have at the moment. And that's not to say that you're not going to go to a new location, or that you're not going to increase your financial earnings, or that the stock market's not going to go in the direction you want. All of these things could happen, and that's all great. But when you recognize the things that you currently do have, and you always have something. If you're alive and breathing, you have something. The last thing you will ever have is your breath. And if that's all you have, you still have that breath. And that's all we need, is just one thing to recognize and to appreciate. And from this mindset, from this headspace where you are truly receiving what it is that life has put in front of you, that you have the capacity to actually embrace and honor yourself as you are, where you are, without feeling the need to be somewhere else, to be someone else, to be appreciated or be perceived in a certain way by certain people, because you can never control those things. The stock market will do what it will do. People will like your photos or they won't like them. People will enjoy your art or they won't. People will smile at you or they'll just walk past you. You can't control those things. You can do your best to influence them, with your conscious action, choice, and decisions, but that's all you can do. And, congratulate yourself for doing those things, but also know that things don't have to arrive at the outcome that you ideally would like in order for you to be in a space of contentment, gratitude, appreciation. One thing that's been really big for me lately is the realization that the world that I would like to live in and that I would like to shape and help cultivate, it begins now. It doesn't begin when, some president says it begins, or when, circumstances in the world change and line up perfectly with my, business plan or agenda. This analytical way of looking at things is very limiting for us. To give an example of what I mean and what I've been doing in my life, rather than waiting until I have millions of spare disposable income, and when I'm at a point where like I'm so financially secure and free that then I can start, being generous and kind to other people. I'm working with the means that I have, and if that means, giving a small donation here or there toward a cause or toward somebody's, venture, then I will do that. I don't have to wait until I'm so financially free in my head that I can just start giving gifts. I can do that now. Maybe the gifts aren't going to be like a Ferrari or something like that, but I can give a gift. See, the way it looks outside isn't so important. as the intention that is behind the action. I have this thing as a creative person, I'm often hesitant to share anything unless I have a big audience, or if I know a lot of people are going to look at it or listen to it or whatever it is. And with that mindset, nothing will ever come out of me. Like, there will never be a creation. Nobody will enjoy it because it's not there to be enjoyed. No one will dislike it either. If I'm to approach, my creative endeavors in this way, I'm robbing myself of the ability to express myself for fear of what other people will say or not say about it. And if everybody did this, there wouldn't be any art in the world. If we all waited until we were billionaires before we gave a random act of kindness, we'd all just be, attacking each other more so than we are now. And is that getting us any closer to whatever your utopian space looks like? I think we all share the common goal of having community and connection and kindness, being prevailing notions in our existence. You don't have to wait for other people to be nice to you in order for you to be nice to somebody else. If you want more kindness in this world, then you lead with kindness. And if someone says something horrible to you or does something terrible, the reaction isn't to meet them with that same vibration. It's to send them a blessing, to see the pain that they're in, for their action is only a reflection of their own internal world. And for you to neutralize that with a blessing of kindness, it's a beautiful thing. Don't wait until things start changing outside before you start feeling and acting how you want, because they're not going to change until you change. And as long as you are waiting, you're going to be waiting. Things don't just change and happen by themselves. It takes a combination of intention and action to bring about things in this world. And I know how difficult and challenging it can be, when you're feeling things that you don't want to feel, and all you want is for the outside to change, to give yourself permission to change. And don't worry about getting there, because really what I've found is that it's about being comfortable with being here and being with the process. And you could argue that there, wherever that is, however far down the line, it's not even a thing. It's going to be here. When it arrives, you will be here. You're always here. You're always here in this moment. And that's the only space from which you can create. It starts right now. Don't wait. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you again. So I was having a really bad day today, and what do we do when we have a bad day? Well, sometimes we make it worse, and that's what I did. And I did a lot of social media binging and so on. And it actually started off, I was listening to a sort of self-helpy podcast. So I thought, I'll go search up this person who's being interviewed. And so I got into this guy's Instagram page and like, there'll be some nice motivation here. And on the page, a lot of it was about like productivity and work and stuff like that. And like, you have to sacrifice this and you have to do that. And all of these, insights or approaches, I would say, toward work. And it kind of got me thinking to myself, like, am I not working enough? Like, here in the Western world, like we attribute work, like that word work has this connotation of it being associated with finance, with money. Like you work and then you get money in exchange. I mean, that's typically the charge behind the word work. And I do a lot of things with my day that I don't get paid for. Like in fact, a lot of the stuff in my life that I do for, many years, I don't get really paid a lot for it. And I kind of found it interesting how I was triggered by this guy's Instagram page, and more so, I want to start a conversation on work. Like, I would love to hear some feedback about what other people think when they hear the word work. Like, it's interesting if you look in different cultures, for example. Like here's like, I'm in Ireland, so in Ireland, 8-hour workday, 40-hour work week is normal. That's work, and then everything outside of that is whatever, your passion project or leisure or whatever. But I've lived in like Turkey, like traditional parts of Turkey, where people live in a much simpler way, you could say. And the divide between work and living is a hell of a lot different than what you would see here. And I found it kind of interesting because their people are like working way more than we work over here, because they're literally working every moment that they're awake, because the work that they do is like, I don't know, if they have a fruit stall, they wake up, they open up the shop, and then they're standing there all day selling fruit, rearranging everything, taking in orders and all of this stuff. And that can take their entire day, and it's way more than just 8 hours. Like oftentimes, there's this one dude I saw, he would literally be there at 2 a.m. still, making the place look nice and stuff like that. So he was putting in, an actual full day's work. But it was just kind of interesting how that kind of day, the day that he put in over there, like it's just considered life. It's not work, it's just life. Here we work during the day, and that's like, disciplined work, and then after maybe you go for coffee with a friend or something. But in Turkey, in that culture, and in many cultures, you're working throughout the day, but your friends are, working with you, and you're having coffee with your friends. And this formality stuff that we do over in the West just isn't really a thing there. It's like, you're smoking cigarettes on the job, you're having tea on the job, a customer comes in and maybe you have some tea with them. And these people might not be wealthy financially to the same extent that maybe someone working in like the tech industry or something like that would be, but they're wealthy in like in the heart. Like they have so much love, and their motivation, for what they're doing is, I suppose, more wholesome, if I was to put a word on it. And then I think, you can work in a supermarket here. Say, like in Ireland, you're working in Tesco's or something. And you're doing your whatever 8-hour shift, and then you come home and that's that. But then next door you have someone in a charity shop who's not working, but they're volunteering, even though they're doing the same work. But we call one work and we call one volunteering. And it's quite likely that you would do that volunteering day on a day where you weren't working, when you weren't working for money or whatever. So the question that prompted this is, am I working hard enough? And I don't know. Like our expectations around what work is and the standards that we have for work are so dependent on the place that we're living and the conditioning that we've had around it. It's like you could look at me and say I'm lazy. Like I don't get up particularly early, but at the same time I don't go to bed particularly early. Like it's half past midnight as I record this, and I mean, is this work? I mean, there's people that do podcasts and create content for a living, and I'm sure they'd call it work, but because maybe I'm not going to get revenue from this, I almost discount what I'm doing as unimportant, or like it's just extra, it's leisure. But if you're getting a guaranteed paycheck, if you're getting a salary, then it's considered of more esteem. And what is the difference between, I don't know, like, let's take Ed Sheeran, a very famous singer. What's the difference between what he does now versus what he did when he was, you know, creating the name for himself? Like, there was a long period where he just played and played and played and made no money, but now he still plays and plays and plays and he makes loads of money. But what really has changed between that version of him that made the money versus that version that didn't make money? I suppose it's just the perception. And now we see him as he is, and we see a successful person versus a person who's trying, because we associate success with money. But I think if I was to ask those people selling fruit in Turkey, like, do they feel successful? They'd have completely different answers as to what success is, and maybe it wouldn't even cross some people's mind, because they're just living and learning. Work and time-based payment systems and whatnot, they kind of take the focus away from life and almost reduce it to this, you know, window of time where you're just doing a thing because you have to do the thing because that's the thing that is going to put the food on the table and blah blah blah. So it's like we associate work with being able to meet your basic needs, when really the middleman of work could almost be cut out in a way, because there are people that wake up and tend to the garden and harvest vegetables and prepare food from the work that they've put in over time to create the food and whatnot. But then it's project-based, task-based work. And with that kind of work, you don't always see the results right away. And I guess that's kind of bringing it full circle. It's like, maybe I don't see the results for the thing I did yesterday. Maybe I don't see the results for the song I practiced yesterday, but maybe down the line I'll perform that, and that performance will have something come of it. Just like when you plant a seed, you don't really see much until it starts to grow, and even then you can't do much with it. You still got to keep nurturing it, and then the harvest comes, and then you repeat. I think beyond all of these concepts that we've created for ourselves, be it work, play, good, bad, beautiful, ugly, whatever it is, they're just things that our ego can latch onto. You know, anything to maintain our identity, because God forbid we lose our sense of self and are just nothing. Because then you would truly just be living moment to moment, and you wouldn't be living with within the confines of the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, our friends, our family, our heritage, and all of this. I suppose it always comes back to balance, doesn't it? Balance of the recognition of the fact that you are human, and then also the truth that this experience is all temporary and goes beyond the form of I am me and you are you, and you work here and I work there, and I'm unemployed, I'm not unemployed versus employed, millionaire versus someone in poverty. They're all just expressions of life. They're all expressions of this essence, be they different polarities. So it's really up to you. It's up to me whether or not I'm working hard enough. Because at the end of the day, it's all just subjective. It's all based on what we've been through up until now. Have a good one. Worry is prayer for things that you don't want. That's chaos around here. Get my notebook. Now, I thought I had written some stuff about worry down, but it seems I didn't. So they must just be in my head. So I want to talk about worrying, why we do it, why it might be beneficial to switch the perspective on worrying, and how we can do that. So first off, the reason that we worry, well, let's just consider this. Worry is a thought that we have, or a feeling that we have, that's based on our imagination of a future experience that has not yet happened. So we're imagining something that is going to happen in the future, and as a result, we are feeling what we anticipate feeling if that thing were to happen. So let's say I'm worried about getting in a car crash, and now I start to feel the feelings that I would imagine myself feeling if I was in a car crash. So I'm effectively pulling that reality into my present moment when I worry. Now let's consider the fact and be aware of the fact that the future, you know, it hasn't happened until the present. So the future is always has the potential to manifest in whatever way, depending on what we bring to those moments. So in this example, you could say that I am effectively bringing that reality into my present moment. Yeah, I might not have the physical manifestation of a car crash, but I'm still feeling the things that I anticipate feeling. And that's ultimately what our projections are, is that they're a pulling of a certain frequency into our present moment. So you could say that worry is prayer for things you don't want, because what are you doing? You're focusing your attention on something you don't want. You're bringing that into your current reality through your feelings and experience and thoughts. And so, you know, you may as well be living in that reality. Now, obviously it doesn't feel very good to, you know, have those sensations in your body, in your mind. So what we can do instead is recognize, okay, you know, it's totally valid that I'm concerned about a car crash happening and I don't want that to happen. But also keep in mind that it hasn't happened and it doesn't need to happen. And just as you can imagine what it feels like to be in a car crash when you're not in a car crash, you can also imagine what it might feel like to feel good. You know, what it might feel like to be chilling with some of your friends on a beach or something like that. Whatever it is that tickles your fancy, you can pull that reality into your present experience too. And that's really the difference between worry and excitement. Is like excitement, you're stoked about the thing that's going to come your way. Whereas with worry, you're not stoked about it. You're not excited about it. So a simple little reframe or trick that you could use is when you find yourself worrying about something that you probably don't have any control over at this point in time, just imagine what it might be like if something you actually wanted to happen is going to happen to you, and see how that feels, because that's what excitement is. And we all know that feeling excited is a beautiful feeling, you know, it's almost like being in love. And the only difference between worry and excitement is our feeling toward the situation that may or may not happen. So from this perspective, it kind of makes sense that if you find yourself worrying, that you would just take a minute to realize that you are projecting into a future, possibly based on, you know, stories that you've heard or based on your past experience of things that have happened to you. And you know yourself, it doesn't feel good. So why feed that reality when it's not currently here? Because in feeding it, even if it doesn't manifest physically as a car crash or whatever, you're still feeling the feelings associated with it right now, because you're worrying about it, because you're thinking about it in the future. And no, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen. Like I don't really believe that you just think about bad things and they'll happen to you. But I do feel that if you are focused on negativity, if you're focused on, you know, bad things or whatever, you are more likely to be aware of the unfavorable things that are happening around you. So it's pretty simple. If you focus, like if you start your day and you say, today I'm going to choose to see the kindness in the world, you're going to then notice for the rest of the day things that represent kindness to you. Maybe you recognize a stranger smiling, or, you know, someone picking up someone's handbag if they dropped it. Anything like that is a symbol of kindness, for me at least. So the difference between having that sort of anxiety that is worry related and a sense of optimism and excitement for the world that we're living in is the intention that we set. So what do we want for ourselves? And that's what prayer is. And I understand that prayer isn't a very accessible word for a lot of people. I really did not resonate with prayer because I'm from Catholic Ireland and was raised being forced to go to mass, and you know, I don't have a good association with that word. But as I've come to find out about these things by myself through my journey, prayer is really just the opposite of worry. Worry is prayer for things that you don't want. Prayer is the opposite of worry. It's bringing the things that you would like to see more of in your life into the now, into the present moment. And in doing so, that's what you begin to see. And since the future is malleable, it's not yet created, the present moments that you move forward with are going to create the future. Remember, the future is just a present moment that hasn't yet happened. And when it does happen, it'll be in the present. So how you are now in this present moment is definitely going to influence in a big way your perception, at least, of how the future is. So consider that next time you find yourself worrying or in an anxious spiral. Consider, like, what am I putting my energy toward right now? Is it that I'm bringing an unfavorable future into my now? And if so, how can I make a small adjustment right here, right now to bring a bit of calm into my body and to relax my nervous system? Maybe it's just focusing on the abundance that surrounds you. Maybe it's the sound of a bird in a tree, or maybe it's the breeze, you know? Like things like wind. If you consider how important and valuable the wind is to the entire ecosystems that we are surrounded by, like wind transports seeds, and then these seeds grow into trees, and then things eat the things on the trees, and the tree dies and things build their own habitat inside a dead wood, and all of that is because of wind. You know, one tiny little thing has this huge knock-on effect. And you can see stuff like that
all throughout your day, all throughout the world, if you just take a minute to consider it. And so that's my invitation to you today. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, a beautiful evening, a beautiful life, and I'll catch you next time.
As I reflect on the notion of making a video about reflecting on the year that's just gone, I wonder why it is I've never really done something like this before. I think one of the reasons is that I would often compare my year, my achievements, or my perceived lack of them to those of other people around me, or the people I admire on the internet. The goals that I have as an artist are typically quite lofty and achieved in a non-linear fashion. When you're building an audience for years, you can see next to no progress, and then one day everything just starts to explode, and then maybe even the next it just stops again. So rather than going based on those boom and bust metrics, I decided I would have a look at the smaller details that made up my year and the decisions and actions that I took that contributed to my goals in the bigger picture in the long run, and hopefully contributed positively to my life and the lives of those around me. So here's some things that happened. It had been a goal of mine to be self-employed and to live independently, like away from my parents and away from the restrictions of visas and whatnot. And so I found myself in Ireland, where I'm from. 2022 marked the first year where I managed to pull this off. And while self-employment is like a tightrope filled with anxiety and frustration and like, what am I doing? There's a lot of freedom and flexibility that comes with that, and that's what I value. In terms of work, I got to do some interesting client projects with different brands and people and businesses and be of service in that respect. And I also did, of course, my personal projects like this YouTube channel, for example, and I made over 300 videos across all platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and was able to reach a lot of people like that, more than ever before. Another thing that I really wanted to do was incorporate traveling with not traveling. So I wanted to travel, but I didn't want the anxiety and frustration and poorness that came with traveling. So rather than packing a bag and leaving the country and going for broke, I got a place, I set up a lifestyle that included finances and income, and then was able to get to a point where I could afford to take time off, and I didn't have a boss to ask for time off. And so I just went for 6 weeks to Turkey with my tent, my backpack, and I met some amazing people. I did some wonderful camping. I stayed in some cool cities, and it was because I've created this lifestyle and shaped my life so that it can facilitate stuff like that. And that's something that I really wanted to do. Like years ago, I had that vision. I was like, I'm gonna do it. And the whole time, I've kind of not even realized that I did it. And when I wasn't doing that, I was doing all I could to find adventure here in Ireland on my doorstep. So I took the bike out, I joined a hiking group, I just went places with people I'd never met before and forged great friendships along the way doing that as well.
When I get lonely,
I don't know how many songs I wrote this year, but I probably wrote around 30 or 40, and most of them aren't going to see the light of day, but the ones that have and the ones that will, I'm really stoked about them and excited to continue sharing them with people. And on the note of songwriting and performing, I played my first shows this year with no guitar, which is a huge deal for me as a singer-songwriter who's always used this acoustic guitar as like protection. When the crowd's in front of you, you just got your guitar, and then it's like it's armor or something like that. But to go up there like with a band or with my backing tracks that I produce for my other non-acoustic music, and to actually do that and to be on the stage and be like, what do I do with my hands? Yeah, I might have looked a bit awkward, but it was really fun, and to have people vibing and dancing to those tunes was like something that I'm so excited about to continue sharing that going forward. So this year I learned a bunch of different skills and started a bunch of different ventures, and I just stopped halfway through.
And I don't even feel bad about that, because the things that I stopped doing, I still learned all the skills to help me get as far as I did. So I learned how to build e-commerce websites, build email lists, automation, email marketing. I learned a ton of different graphic design things. I learned the language of copyright, all of these things. And a lot of those projects never came to fruition, or I never finished them. But I think that sometimes we just start something, or we get the inspiration to do something, not necessarily to get to the end goal of completing that thing, but rather it's just the vehicle that the universe like uses to help us learn the skill that we might later apply to some other project or to some other circumstance. I took at least 365 cold showers, meditated that many times, did breath work that many times, did a bit of running, swam in the cold sea, cancelled all of my subscriptions except for YouTube Premium. I just don't see why anybody doesn't have YouTube Premium. Ads take up so much mental clutter in your mind. Get rid of that. Throughout the year, I set my personal record for the most money I've ever made in one day. I did that a couple of times. I pitched a TV show that got rejected. I was on a couple of podcasts. I did an audition for a Jersey Boys tribute band and didn't get that, but I danced and that was fun, and I've never danced really properly before, and I did a dance audition. I made a lot of sourdough bread. So that's a wrap on my 2022. At a glance, it didn't really seem like I had done much, but when I dived a bit deeper, I realized that actually I didn't do too bad at all. Have a great 2023.
Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me...
The moment that I start to contemplate what somebody else might think about something that I'm doing with myself or with my day or with my life is usually when it starts to go downhill. Particularly within the realm of art, if we're doing stuff based on what we expect others might think of the stuff that we're doing, it's quite probable that we might end up more frustrated than if we had just been doing it for the love of it in the first place. I know that when I get some sort of inspiration, maybe through listening to a song or by seeing a certain video, right away I start to think to myself, oh, I can't wait to create something in a similar fashion or something that's derived from this art piece that I've seen, and I get excited about it, and I start to think about how other people might interact with it the way that I've interacted with it. I start projecting my worth onto this new project as though when this project is complete and out there in the world and people are engaging with it and perceiving it in a positive way, then I will be, by extension, a more worthy human. I project a lot onto the artist and think that they're amazing, and no doubt they are. I mean, we all are amazing, but I put them on this pedestal in the pursuit of creating something in a similar fashion. I almost put that piece of art that I would like to create on a pedestal, and so then I'll start, working on the song or whatever it is, and it might be enjoyable at first, but then it gets to the point where I'm really comparing it to this other piece of artwork that I'm basing it off of, or that inspired it, and I start to kind of A and B test them, and I see that the A, so the one that I'm inspired by, is like incredible, and it's still stirring up all of this emotion, and then the next one, my one, is like, it's not sounding sonically the same, it doesn't have the same lyrical flow or whatever it might be, and then I start to think, well, I could never make it comparable or as high quality as this other piece that I'm inspired by, so what's even the point? Like, I'm never going to be like that artist, I'm never going to be like that filmmaker, I'm never going to be like that person. And so I kind of beat myself down as though the only way for me to be a worthy individual is to create something that I have perceived as worthy. If you ask 10 different people their perception of that song or that piece of art, then you're probably going to get 10 different responses, and some people might not be interested in it whatsoever, which then really highlights the fact that the question of one's worthiness is very subjective, and what's not subjective is the fact that we're all here. You could argue that we're all just an expression of whatever has put us here, And so how can one be better or worse than the other if each individual is experiencing things in a different way and we have different preferences, and that's all great. I mean, all of the people of the world are basically just different spices and seasonings in a delicious stew of life or whatever. If I'm trying to emulate or create something based off of something else and I don't feel like I'm getting it right, that's just in my perception that it's not right. But truth be told, someone else might listen to that same piece that I've created and find a lot of value in it, even though I don't. If I'm ever approaching a task or a piece of art from the perspective of I need to get this to a certain standard in order to be loved or accepted in this world, then I've started off on the wrong foot, because I've gone into it with the intention of finding validation and finding a sense of self-worth, as if those things are required in order for me to live harmoniously on this earth. Because you can create a masterpiece that astonishes millions of people, but that doesn't necessarily translate to me feeling that same sense of astonishment toward myself. One of the most enjoyable experiences for me throughout a day is just banging on the drums. And I'm not a particularly good drummer, in my opinion, and I don't ever expect to be drumming in a even semi-professional way, but I just like sticking in my earbuds and banging away on the kit. And when I'm playing the drums, I'm really just playing the drums, and I'm playing the drums because that's what I want to do, and it feels good and it brings me a lot of joy to do that. But when I leave the drum kit, or when I'm in the middle of playing, even if I'm screwing up, it doesn't even bother me, because I don't have any expectation or anticipation of where the drum kit's going to take me. And maybe it will take me somewhere one day, but I'm definitely not holding out for it, which is probably why I still do it. And if I don't do it on a day, then I don't even care, because obviously it means I didn't want to do it. But when it comes to my identity that I've created for myself as like a singer-songwriter, I definitely feel a lot of pressure on the days where I don't write, or with the days where I'm not producing, or the days where I'm not practicing. I feel bad about myself, as if that's what I need to do in order to be worthy of life, in order to be worthy of love, in order to be a contributing member of society, whatever that might mean for you. It's important that we do our best to give value and to be of service to our communities and our friends and our family, but you can't be of service to others without first looking after yourself. And so that means you need to effectively fill up your cup before you can offer your offering to anybody else. Because if I'm creating something, or if I'm offering service from a place of unworthiness or self-hatred, then the offering is going to hold some sort of residual feeling in that realm as well. That's not to say that you're useless in those moments, but it's just to say that perhaps on those days it's best that you look after yourself and take care of yourself, rather than trying to be the next Elvis or Bob Ross or whatever it is that you want to do. I think that, in my experience at least, when inspiration strikes on the basis of listening to something else or seeing something else, then it's usually a slippery slope to exhaustion for me, because I try to emulate the same thing. But really, perhaps what would have been most beneficial for me at that point in time would just have been to appreciate fully the art form that I was experiencing without trying to recreate it. Because in trying to recreate it, I'm really just trying to find and feel like I'm worthy, in the sense that I perceive this other artist or creative person to be worthy. I do believe that we are all inherently worthy, but the gifts that I offer are different to the gifts that you offer and everybody else might offer. They look different, and that's the beauty of this big stew that we're in, is that we don't need to adhere to certain standards. We just need to allow for the gradual presentation and expression of our gifts in whatever form they might take, without putting them on a pedestal, without trying to have them look and be a certain way. Because the consideration of normal is really just something that we've all collectively agreed to over many years, And we see it every day, every week, every month, every year, that normal changes. What is normal now was not normal 20 years ago. And what's normal in 10 years is not going to be considered normal today. But this is just the transience of time and the natural progression of events. The worth, the value of each being is inherent in existence. You don't need to do a particular thing. It's often by accident or just, a simple coincidence that we end up expressing ourselves in the most authentic ways. And that's not something that you can plan. We can't plan to be authentic. It's something that's transcends the analytical. It's like surrendering and co-creating with what is in front of you. You can't just map it out all of the time. It's the delicate balance of the surrender and then the active action, I suppose. Yeah, I'll just cut it there. In that unknown and in that uncertainty, there is potential for the most beautiful of outcomes. There seems to be so much distaste toward uncertainty in this day and age, and I can understand why. And I experience a lot of frustration with uncertainty as well. And at the same time, uncertainty shouldn't be demonized as much as it is, I believe, because it's only in the space of uncertainty or in the unknown that something can happen for us. Like usually when things are uncertain, we get scared and we want to know exactly what's going to happen. We want to be certain about everything. Like we want to know what's going to happen on Tuesday at 3 o'clock, and we want to know what's going to happen at 5 o'clock, and so on and so forth. And when we don't know exactly what's going to happen, this sort of anxiety and panic sets in. And that's quite normal. And at the same time, uncertainty provides a lot of excitement. If you don't know what's happening at Tuesday at 3 o'clock, that means anything could happen. Your wildest dreams could come true. We ought to keep that in mind when we don't know what's going to happen and we're trying to fill up our calendar and plan everything. It's good to leave space, because in leaving the space, it means you've created and left that open for something else to come in that perhaps your mind hasn't anticipated at this point in time. Because we don't really know what we want next week from this week. I mean, it's constantly changing. And to give an example, in my recent excursions, I went on a cycling trip, and I had a plan to just kind of go for one night and then camp somewhere and then come back. But at the same time, I was open to being flexible with that. And sure enough, when I went on the bike trip, I ended up bumping into two other people that were cycling their bikes, and then we were kind of headed the same direction. So we ended up going together, and then we camped the first night together. It wasn't where I had planned to camp, but it worked out quite well because I was tired and I couldn't go any further anyway. And so we hung out and it was nice. And then the next day we decided we'd go on together further. And at this point, if I had stuck to my original plan, I would have just gone home. But instead I continued and explored a little bit more, and it was a beautiful experience for me to cycle that much, because I've never cycled that much before. And I got to see different parts of the country that I'd never seen before and experience being a cyclist. So that's what opportunity lay in the unknown for me on that occasion. And I mean, there's so many other occasions where the unknown has had a beautiful surprise for me that I could never have anticipated. And so I'm grateful that that uncertainty, that unknown, was ahead of me, because into that space of unknown came a beautiful gift. So we needn't be so fearful of the uncertainty and the unknown, and we needn't
have a plan for everything. It's good to have a loose sort of framework. You know, my framework for the cycling trip was to get on the bike, go in that direction, have equipment to camp, and the means to come home. So in that sense, I was comfortable. I had a framework. I knew I wasn't going to be, you know, left high and dry. But at the same time, I was open to other possibilities. And so it's not to say that we just throw all planning out the window, but maybe don't try and have everything planned so precisely and so perfectly, because while your intention, of course, is good, we don't know what we don't know. And you don't know yet what's going to happen next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. So yeah, keep in mind what you might want to do, but also keep in mind that there could be another opportunity that arises at that time. And if at that point in time the opportunity presents itself and you're like, no, I said I was going to go have coffee with Jim, so I have to go have coffee with Jim, even though I've just gotten this like offer for a job interview that could potentially change the rest of my life, I still have to go for coffee with Jim. Sorry about that job interview, or whatever it is. You see, if we're too rigid in our planning and our strategy, then we're shutting down a lot of potential that the universe might be offering us. So yes, of course, you know, make your plans here and there and have that be your general guideline, your general direction, but at the same time be open to the uncertainty that may lie within those plans. And if you don't know what's coming next, if there is a big chunk of uncertainty in front of you, that's okay. You don't need to know exactly what's going to happen. You don't need to know who your next relationship is going to be with. You don't need to know what the weather's going to be. You don't need to know where exactly your next paycheck is going to come from. But do know that in that unknown and in that uncertainty, there is potential for the most beautiful of outcomes, and nothing is set in stone. If you really do hold the belief that all will be well, then it will be. The timing of it might not be what you expect. You know, it might not be next week, might not be next month, might not be next year. There could be a lot of perceived obstacles and roadblocks and unfortunate circumstances on the path, but if you really hold it in your heart that all will be well, then all will be well. All is well. And the way that the mind expects things to be isn't always how it is, and it's not always how it's meant to be. Things happen that at the time might seem unfortunate, but going forward and in the future, once you've had time to reflect, it's almost always the case that you look back on those scenarios that at the time you really disliked, and you realize the gift in it because it's brought you to the place that you're at now. You've got a different state of awareness, a different state of being. There's lessons that you've learned along the way. And so in trusting in the unknown, you're trusting in almost a greater plan, a divine plan, or paying attention to the fact that it's not just you against the world, it's you in the world. And the world is here for you as much as you are for the world. So take solace in the unknown, take solace in the uncertainty, because there's so much beauty to be had there, and you don't need to know what it looks like. So let it be unknown, let it be uncertain, and just embrace it as it comes.
When I finally decided to pursue my desired lifestyle, which consisted of creativity, flexibility, and a limitless income, amongst other things, there was a bitter pill that I had to swallow first. The pill, per se, was that I was not equipped to achieve any of these things, considering the way I was brought up. Most people are not prepared to achieve these things. My education, which was time-consuming and costly, was preparing me for the complete opposite of everything that I just mentioned. Education primed me for a rigid life of employment, 9 to 5 or something similar. It strongly encouraged creativity as a hobby and not a means to actually generate income and wealth for yourself. And given that the objective of the education system is to get you in the workforce, presumably working for somebody for a salary, at the end of all of this rigmarole, you could definitely say that a limitless income was not really accessible to me. This video is going to be longer than other videos because it's a big topic, and if you spent decades creating the version of your life that you live right now, it's going to take more than 10 minutes to unwind all of that. In fact, no length video is going to really make a difference, but if you take some of the things that I share here based on my experience and implement, or at least contemplate some of the things, you will notice that over the next while, a year or whatever, this is not exciting and sexy, change your life immediately. That's just not the reality of building a life that you really enjoy. You need to commit and dedicate effort and energy over a sustained period of time in order to achieve that. If you're looking for a quick fix, this is not it, so sorry. But if you're here for the ride, welcome. So the reason we're in this situation is because we have more or less been programmed with an operating system, you could say. And it's quite a disempowering operating system. And it might not be the best operating system for you and your goals, okay? So we're gonna talk to a different version of me right now about how to dismantle this operating system and build up a new one and create a life that we're actually excited about. Now, uninstalling this metaphorical operating system is simple, but it's extremely difficult. If it seems impossible for you to go from where you are to where you want to be, that's a good thing. You have not yet done the things that make you the person you want to be, but over a long enough time frame, you can learn what those things are, do them, and evolve into that new version of yourself. This is alchemy. The version of you that you are right now is the version of you that you are. All of the things that you've done up until this point have led you to the person that you are. In order to become a different person, you need to become a different person, which means you need to do new things that your current self would not do. The reason that you're not living the life that you aspire to live is because you're not yet that person who lives that life, but you can become that person. Now, here's what's kind of tricky about it, is that you don't actually know the things that that person would do. You might have ideas of what that person would do, but you don't actually know for sure. And that's totally okay, because every person that you admire, that you aspire to be like, was in that same situation. The way that you find out what the things you need to do in order to become the person that you want to become is to take action. You don't even need to know what to do. Even if you're taking action from a place of cluelessness, that is a great place to start. If you can learn to walk, if you can learn to talk, to understand English, you could learn to be a millionaire or whatever else it is that you aspire for in this life. So if you've clicked on this video, you're probably to some degree frustrated with your life, or you're not happy with the direction that you're headed. So as I mentioned in the intro to this video, we have all been conditioned. We've all downloaded a program of how we're supposed to go about life and how we're supposed to get things done and how we're supposed to live. In order to change your trajectory, you need to first become aware of these programs. This is going to help you understand how you got to where you are. It's going to help you identify the things that are keeping you where you are. Once you're aware of these things, you can then start to dismantle or unwind them. And from that place, you have the opportunity to recreate or reinvent a new operating system for yourself that is more favorable for you and your objectives. So I'm going to begin by explaining something that happened in my life with the hopes that you can relate to it in some way, shape, or form and see a tangible way in which you can implement what I'm sharing in this video. I lived the majority of my life with my faith and trust blindly placed in people that were older than me, like teachers and parents and caregivers, family, whatever. And the idea was that you just need to keep on committing to a period of being told what to do, which would then lead you to a place where you would ultimately be free and happy. But the first period, which would be like school, only led me to third level education. So the things that were supposed to be solved by second level were then kicked down the road to third level. So now I was in college, and the understanding was that after college is then when you can be free and live your life and have the money and do what you want to do. But then after college, it seemed like there wasn't really a clear roadmap because I had an arts degree. There wasn't really much use for it. So I ended up going into the unskilled labor force because that was the new place, the new hot place to go to learn how life works and figure your stuff out. But I realized in there that without jumping to more education systems and whatnot, there wasn't really any end goal. There was nowhere more to go because the systems that were profiting from
my participation in them were now exhausted. My life was fine at this time. I didn't have any particular sense of passion or purpose in me. I was making okay money and I was having a great time socializing, and I could eat out 2 to 3 times a day to kind of numb the void that I was feeling, but ultimately I was unsatisfied because I wasn't doing any sort of soul work, is what I refer to it as. It's the thing that you wake up and it gets you out of bed because you feel like there's meaning in you doing it and there's meaning in other people receiving what it is that you're sharing. And I wasn't tapping into that because the system wasn't really supporting me in tapping into that. As a creative person that had big goals but no mentorship to execute on them. And this is especially annoying because you're told what to do your whole life. I was told to go to school. I was told to go to college. I was told everything was going to be okay. And then all of a sudden things weren't okay and nobody was telling me what to do anymore. And so I needed to figure it out for myself, which I think is something that you're probably realizing yourself now at this point if you're watching this video and you're wondering how you can create a life that you're actually pleased to live. So I decided that I was going to make a change in my own life, and I thought I knew what I wanted to do. At the time, my objective was to become a touring musician, and that's how I was going to pursue my career in the arts. As we'll learn later on in this video, that didn't quite work out as planned, and we'll also realize that the function of planning is not necessarily to achieve the objective of the plan, but it gets us in a direction. It gets us moving and momentum builds, and when momentum builds, then new things that we hadn't yet thought about can come into our lives. And those are the things that ultimately ended up shaping my life into the way that it is now, and will most likely shape yours as well. Because the reality is, if you're interested in an alternative path in life that's not tied to this system that I've just referred to, we need to be open to new possibility and different ways of navigating situations in business, in friendship, in lovership, in relationship to self. The possibility for all of this unfolds once you begin moving. So when I decided to stop what I was doing and try and create the life I wanted, I found that I yet again fell into the trap of following a predetermined path to become a musician. So I would be looking at what other musicians did and try to replicate that in some way, shape, or form. But even that was another rigid attempt to control and manipulate certain outcomes that maybe weren't even for me. Because the truth is, the best outcomes are the ones that you don't even know exist right now. They're not even in your awareness, and they kind of come as a surprise. The nature of an entrepreneurial or creative path is that there is no structured way to get to where you're going. It's constantly trial, error, reinventing, practicing, failing, discovering, and learning. And this is what ultimately makes the life of a free person, is someone who is surrendered to this process. Instead of going from A to B, you might just skip B altogether and go to C. You might alchemize the letter B into a completely different letter of a completely different alphabet that doesn't yet exist. Because that's the nature of creation. It's not rigid, and in any given moment, something new can arise. The issue with the society that we're raised in is that it's very rigid in its structure, and deviating from the norm is a sin. Not knowing what tomorrow brings, even though we can never truly know that, is bad news. The system that we live in is completely counterintuitive to the way that humans naturally would live. But then the most ironic thing is that the system was created by humans. It was created by somebody who was not thinking inside the box. An entrepreneurial person, an entrepreneurial mind created the education system. They created this set of circumstances for us to move through. Meanwhile, the person that created it is very, very much free. John D. Rockefeller was the founder of the General Education Board, and he is quoted as saying, "I want a nation of workers, not thinkers." So this system is primed to make workers, people to slot in to do things that the thinkers are coming up with. And the thinkers are the people that see through the system of sorts, that deviate from the norm and create something new. If you're not a thinker, you're by default a worker, and therefore at the mercy to the thinkers. Of course, we don't need to take this so literally. There's nuance and there's balance between the two. You can be a worker and a thinker simultaneously. I'm not saying that this is black and white and that one camp is better or worse than the other. But you're here and you're looking for ways, I'm sure, to increase your quality of life, your quality of experience in this incarnation, in this life, in this existence, whatever it is. Make the decision and then act.
The difference between people that watch this video and change their life dramatically in the next 6 months, a year, whatever, and the people that are in the exact same position in 6 months or a year is whether or not they acted. That's it. It's as simple as taking action. And I want to clarify, it's taking action in a new direction. Because if you keep taking action in the direction that you're going, that you know where it leads to, you're probably going to end up just further down that road. And then eventually you'll have to turn around and come even further back. If you want to do it now or do it later, whichever. I mean, there's no right or wrong time to do these things. But if you don't want to do it now because you're scared, you're still going to be scared later on down the road. So I don't know, rip the band-aid, bite the bullet, just do it. For years I had decided what I wanted, but I didn't act toward it. So I knew what I wanted to do, but I chose to go to college. Then I finished college and I knew what I wanted to do, but then I chose to move to Canada and just get a dead-end job. I knew what I wanted, but I kept choosing the safer option. Even though I was traveling, I was still traveling with people I knew. Like, I moved across the world with my friends, so it wasn't totally new. When things really started to change for me, it was when I actually shut out all the noise. I moved totally by myself. I went in to learn about yoga, which at the time was totally new to me. I was having a totally new experience in a totally new location with nobody that I had ever met before. And this was the first time that I was actually able to reinvent myself. Because when we're raised and we're always around family, friends, the people we grew up with, the systems, the culture that we're raised in, we become so identified with all of that and we forget that there's actually a lot more outside of that. For so long I was unwilling to jump into the discomfort, and so I just ended up taking safe routes, and they ultimately gave me the same outcome that they always did. Things were fine, things were safe, but unfulfilling. I wasn't getting any closer to what I really wanted for myself, which was to live a free life where I could create, where I could have flexibility, where I could just be myself, where I didn't have to worry about getting a job and wondering, are they going to ask me to shave my beard or cut my hair in a job interview? But again, the issue that I came across was that I wasn't yet the person that had that freedom and flexibility. I wasn't yet doing the things. In practical terms, what that means is I didn't have a skill set that allowed me to set up a business and provide a service that people would pay me for. I didn't have the skills to be self-employed. I didn't have an audience on YouTube. I didn't have a way of getting myself and my message in front of people because I wasn't creating the videos. Now that I have those things, it's because I've cultivated the skills. It's because I'm making the videos that people then have the opportunities to tune into and watch. But the thing is, at the time, I didn't know that I needed to do all of those things in order to make my life change in the direction that I wanted it to go. I didn't know about it until I started doing it. I started testing things out and I started failing miserably. I could look at all of that failure and think, oh, I just wasted my time. I could have done it so much better. And that's true. I could have done it better. With the knowledge I have now, I could go back and I could do it better. But the paradox is that I wouldn't have this knowledge if I hadn't done it so poorly in the first place. The thing that makes your idea profitable, that makes your life change into that beautiful vision you have for yourself, is all of the journey in between. And you don't need to know where you're headed. You don't need to know even what's in between. You just need to take it one step at a time. You know, the safety that you're deluded into thinking you have, it's when you see through that and then you actually start to act from like what's really interesting you, like what's calling you, it gets unpredictable, it gets spontaneous, which we're going to talk about in a minute, the spontaneous nature of abundance. But carving your own path is no small feat. You have not been prepared for this. That's why it's so hard. You literally have been prepared to do the complete opposite. Congratulate yourself for each failure, for each effort that you make. It's so important. And this is all leading you to somewhere that will be out of your wildest imagination, honestly. You can't really even imagine accurately the things that you end up having. The wonderful experiences, the relationships, the connections, the opportunities. You can try imagine it, but like whatever comes to be is probably going to be so much more different than what you imagined in the first place. For better and for worse, because there's always going to be peaks and troughs, ebbs and flows. The spontaneous nature of abundance. I want to explain how following your interests can lead to abundance in your life, both financially, relationally, and experientially. For most of my life, I thought that I needed to work really hard to find opportunities, to find friends, to find lovers, to find whatever. And that's because of the conditioning of our modern day system. You know, it's very linear. It's laid out for you. Do this, do that, and you'll get that. Cool. Doesn't happen that way, but still people believe it over all of these years. Call it insanity, put an Einstein quote there. So there's no airtime given to the magic of the universe or the spontaneous activities and things that end up occurring that put our lives in completely random and interesting trajectories, often much to our appreciation and benefit. You see, the traditional path is, you know, educate, workforce, retire, die. And that's fine. The intention isn't to dissuade you from that, but the fact that you're here, I presume you're probably curious about an alternative. So the majority of my life, the way it's unfolded, was an accident. I literally did not know about what I do now 4 years ago. Like, my plan was to become a famous musician through overnight success, presumably. And it just hasn't occurred yet. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I'm still waiting on the verdict from the universe on that one. I started off, my first failure was when I was trying to be a yoga teacher. So I was teaching meditation and yoga and did some retreats and stuff like this, but I couldn't make it into a sustainable business. And so I said, screw it, I'm gonna go travel. I made a video about that. It's called How Traveling Ruined My Life. So after that, I was like, well, I'm gonna become a travel vlogger on YouTube. And I got my cameras and I went traveling and shot a lot of content. Got like no views. Over that whole year, I made probably like a couple of videos a month. They were pretty bad, but I was learning and I was upskilling. That ultimately led me to realize that I don't know as much about YouTube as I think I do. I need to go back to the drawing board and upskill in that department. But I was upskilling as an editor, as a videographer, and these are the things that ultimately I have monetized now. But it was because of that whole year of failure that I was able to, you know, build my portfolio and kind of build a resume to show to the people that now do pay me and have paid me for the different things that I've done for them. My video agency, like, I do a lot of ads for a lot of popular brands. So I've literally created songs and performed songs for multiple billion-dollar companies. And that's a way that my music has somehow managed to reach the world. And I've been able to do that in a way that's not the traditional path of, you know, hustling and making an album that 2 people listen to on Spotify. I didn't really think that I would make YouTube videos like this one because I just didn't think of it back in the day. It was just never a thought that ran through my head. I am now in the process of creating these immersive meditation experiences with my own original music. Depending on when you're watching this, the link to that is in the description, so check it out if you're into that. My point is that it was an accident. It's going to be to the benefit of me. It's going to be to the benefit of the people that tune in and listen to those meditations. And so something that was just not even in my imagination 4 or 5 years ago is now literally happening. People had always told me back in college that I had this sort of inspirational speaker vibe. Like, sometimes I would say things and people would be like, oh, you should be a motivational speaker. But I didn't think that I could do it here. So, you know, that part of me is now in the work that I do. Coaching actors or speaking with other creatives, like, that is the motivator in me. Like, I've motivated myself to show up and to create and to build an audience, and so I can help motivate other people because I've been where they've been. And it's only because of all of those challenges that I went through that I'm in a position where I can offer support. The fact that this has played out numerous times in my life, I don't really focus too much on the specifics anymore. Like, if something's not working out as I planned, it doesn't give me the same anxiety as it would have a few years ago, because I've come to understand the spontaneous nature of abundance and how that can come in all shapes and forms when you least expect it. And usually when you expect it, it just doesn't happen. When you expect it, it's signaling that there's something right now that you're not paying attention to. That's what I've found. When you're looking for abundance, it's right underneath your nose in some shape, form, or another. And that leads us to the final part of this video. You don't know anything. You are an idiot. The sooner that you accept that, the closer you become to being a genius. I made a video, it's called The Importance of Being an Idiot. You can check that out where I talk about that in detail. But basically, you need to screw up a lot in order to get really good at something. And even when you're really good at something, you're going to continue screwing up, because the nature of life is that it keeps on going. Whether you're here or not, things keep going, they keep changing, they keep alchemizing. So even if you're the best in the world, relatively speaking, you're still going to screw up and have problems and do better, and so on and so forth. So the sooner you get familiar with the idea that you are a novice, the better. Tom Bilyeu, he's one of my favorite podcaster, speaker, coach people out there. And he is a big pioneer for
a growth mindset. And a growth mindset effectively means that when something happens to you, or if you find yourself in a situation that you don't like, to have a growth mindset in that situation is to say, I don't like this situation, but I can get out of it. I might not have the skills necessary to get out of this situation right now, but over a long enough period of time, I can gather those skills and then I can implement and then I can get out of this situation. That's a growth mindset. So if you have a growth mindset, or the identity of a learner, which he refers to as an anti-fragile identity, because if you're a learner and you accept that you are a learner, when you fail, that makes total sense to a learner, because learners are learning. So if you have that identity, no matter what happens to you in your life, if you lose all of your money, if you hit rock bottom, you're still willing to learn through that process. Accept that you are an idiot. Be a novice, be a learner, and be proud of that, because that is what's going to get you to where you want to go. That is going to help you change your life, to create the life that you want for yourself, the people around you. There's so much that I thought I knew when getting into YouTube. Like, I thought I knew how to build a YouTube channel, but I realized after a year of failing to build one that I didn't. I thought I knew that the hardest part about business was getting clients, and I figured that when you have clients, it's easy. You just, have money, then you can pay people to do things. Turns out it's not that easy. I've been hiring freelancers, and freelancers are not as easy to manage as I thought, because it's taken more time, it's taken more money, and the results are not what I expected. And I didn't realize all of that until I did that myself and came to that realization through experience. Because people can tell you, like I'm telling you right now, hiring freelancers is not as straightforward as it might seem, but that's not really helpful for you, because you're going to have a different experience. And it's the combination of our experience and the information that we have that creates knowledge. So in order to get knowledge on a topic or an area of life, you have to actually have the experience and put it in the reps as well. Something else that I didn't realize was that my personal insecurities were going to be triggered, and that was going to come out in the business world. So when people say things to me, some childhood trauma comes up, and I'm like in a fight or flight response. I never thought that was going to happen. That nobody told me that in school, that when you're in the middle of a business transaction in 15 years from now, that you're going to think back to that time that thing happened and you're not going to be able to act with a clear head. People don't tell you these things. You learn it as you go. Between you and your desired outcome are many screw-ups, days feeling like giving up, and seemingly perpetual existential crisis. This stuff is inevitable on your journey and ultimately will be reflected on as some of your most valuable lessons. But you can't get there until you start moving. Your ego is going to be there every step of the way, trying to claim authority over things it has no business claiming authority over. And that's fine, that's normal. That's part of being a human. The only thing that we can pretty much guarantee is that we are going to screw up. And then we can start to focus on learning. Then you can navigate change instead of fighting it. You will have doubt about your value and ability, and that is totally normal. This is all overwhelming at first, and it's supposed to be, because you're literally moving from one reality to another. When Charmander evolves into Charizard, it doesn't happen all at once. He's got to go through a lot of hardship. He's got to first turn into Charmeleon. He's got to fight a load of gym leaders, and then eventually he becomes Charizard. That's it for this video. It's a long video. I know it's a long video. You wouldn't have gotten the same value out of a short video on the same topic, in my opinion, because we need fluff. We need to understand our inner workings to really change the outside. So if you like this video, subscribe. I've never asked anybody to subscribe, well, in the last like 4 or 5 months. So if you like the video, subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, say hi. And there's a newsletter you can sign up to. The link will be in the description. Check out those meditations, the immersive meditation experiences that I've created. I'm super stoked and proud about these, because it's been so cool to combine the creation of music with meditation, with these energetic upgrades, I guess you could call them, that are going to help you ultimately manifest and create and cultivate the life that you want for yourself. So check them out below. Check out this video if you like this video, although this video has been quite long, so you might not want to watch another video right away. Have a great goodbye.